Get a house? Have a son? How will I know what my future looks like? 17-year-old Matt Andrews asked his granddad this unexpected question while they were in the garage working on Matt's Honda CBR 125 engine for the third time that year. They had just finished tightening the cylinder head nuts. Matt's granddad walked over to the bench and placed his wrench down. Above the bench were two shelves filled with manuals and helpful papers he had collected over the years. He hummed softly as he looked at the shelves until he discovered an old brown wallet folder. He took it and carefully pulled out several newspaper clippings, laying them on the bench. "Take a look at these, but be gentle with them. They're quite old, just like me," he said. His granddad picked up his cup of tea, leaving Matt to examine the yellowed clippings. The first one had the headline, "Bournemouth Bomb Wins Big Race." It featured a blurry photo of a young man wearing black leather and holding a large trophy with a winner's garland around his neck. Matt noticed the man in the picture looked a lot like him. "Wow, Granddad, that's you!" he exclaimed. The old man smiled and nodded. As Matt read through the article, he learned that his granddad had participated in a significant national motorcycle race and had actually won, taking home 4 trophies that weekend. He quickly glanced through the other articles, which praised the Bournemouth bomber and predicted he would become a racing star. "I've never seen these before, and no one has ever mentioned them. What happened, Granddad?" "Everyone's life is like a puzzle, son, and these are pieces of my puzzle. We all start off with the same corner piece being born. Over time, we add more pieces, learning to walk, saying our first words, and forming connections with our parents, family, and friends. When I first got a job, it was at a small bike shop that also had a racing team. It was a good way to advertise. When you win races, it helps sell more bikes. Unfortunately, the racer who was supposed to compete had an accident, so they let me step in for that weekend to ensure we had someone on the track. It turned out I was quite good, really good. As a young person, I had no fear and took to racing easily. In my first race that weekend, I came in third, then I got second in the next, and the last 2 races I finished first. They said I was a natural. After that weekend, I became the main racer for events up and down the country. I kept winning or coming in very close to first place. Within 6 months, the bigger teams were reaching out to offer me chances to race for them. But I didn't." Matt looked at his granddad with wide eyes, confused. He asked, "Why didn't you take the offer? You could have been really famous. It doesn't make sense." "I told you life is like a puzzle. Up to a point, I had some pieces ready to fit together, but then those pieces got set aside, and new ones came along. I met your grandma at a holiday camp and fell in love the moment I saw her. Everyone else around her seemed dull, but she added brightness and joy to my life. I knew I couldn't give that up for anything. She doesn't know, and you must never tell her I turned my back on fame and wealth because they were nothing compared to her. A new piece came into my life, and everything else fell into place over time." Within a year, Herbert Anthony Andrews had a heart attack, making the final piece of his life's puzzle complete. If he had continued racing, he might have become a motorcycle champion. But to him, that didn't compare to the life he shared with his dear wife. A few years later, Matt Andrews sat thinking about that talk with his granddad in a small Italian restaurant in Bournemouth, waiting for his wife, Tanya, to arrive. They called it their place, the one they visited on their first night together. They had met due to a bad traffic accident that connected their lives. The incident mirrored Matt's own childhood. A cruel twist of fate on a winter morning had made him an orphan, losing his parents and brother. He had visited the hospital out of concern for a child he hoped had survived the crash. Tanya was there as a police representative, and that's how their lives became joined, leading to their marriage. Today was their first anniversary. As Matt waited for her, he thought about what his granddad said and realized he was right. His life was coming together, and he could see what was next. His phone buzzed with a message, breaking his thoughts. "Sorry, Catch. I'm going to be about 30 minutes late. A lot has happened today. See you around 8. Xac eggs." Matt quickly replied with a couple of kisses and called the waiter for another beer. "Oh no, I need to go. Matt will be waiting for me. This isn't a good way to celebrate our first wedding anniversary." Tanya's boss, Graham, chuckled. "Matt's a good man, Tanya. He'll understand when you tell him. Get the taxi ready and leave now." 10 minutes later, she was in the taxi. At first, she planned to go home and change into something nice for their first anniversary dinner. but the news and her meeting with Graham had messed up those plans. As the taxi drove toward the restaurant, she thought about her life so far. Until a year and a half ago, she focused only on work. She had a few brief relationships, but kept men at a distance, not wanting anything serious. While she liked being close with someone, she often took care of her own needs alone. That was until Matt unexpectedly came into her life. She remembered their first meeting. He seemed to break down almost immediately. His past struggles came rushing back as he faced something similar in her. After that, she felt a strong bond between them, something that felt extraordinary. With him, it felt like fate had been waiting to bring them together. Before Matt, she had let her childhood grief lead her to seek justice for her loss. Her mother, who struggled with addiction, passed away before she was 21. Joining the police gave her the chance to find and confront those who had hurt her and taken away her happy childhood. A whole year had gone by since their wedding. Before getting married, they had talked about their future and the possibility of having children. She aimed to be the best in her field, hoping to take down as many criminals as possible through her smart approach. However, she had promised Matt that after 5 years, they would start a family together, no matter how far she advanced in her career. When they discussed this, she spoke her commitment, but a part of her knew that she might change her mind if needed. By then, she hoped their love would be strong enough to overcome any challenges. "That will be £8.50, the taxi driver said, interrupting her thoughts. She handed him a £10 note, quickly got out of the taxi, and entered the restaurant. The staff at the restaurant were used to Matt and Tanya. They treated them like special guests, welcoming them warmly as if they were royalty. Every time they visited, they were always seated in the same spot as when they had their first meal together, while the staff took care of them. Matt watched her come in, feeling like he might be dreaming. Even after a year of marriage, his heart raced a bit harder every time he saw her. Tanya looked like a beautiful flower as she walked gracefully toward him. She wore fitted jeans and a snug sweater, her hair tied back. Her fit body was evident, and he knew from experience just how active she was. She walked over and kissed him just as a waiter hurried to pull out her chair. "I'm sorry, Matt. It's been a hectic day," she said. "They just announced some changes at work. They are merging teams in our area. Kent and Sussex will combine, and so will Devon and Cornwall, and we'll team up with Hampshire." "Is your job safe? What about everyone else's?" he asked. "There will be some changes at Graham's level, but he's been told that he can retire soon, so he will receive a nice bonus. Everyone will get new roles, but a few positions will stay with their local teams. On the bright side, they are forming new tactical operations teams, which means they will add more people. Graham thinks I might have a chance to lead a new team." Matt smiled broadly. "That's amazing news. I know you've been waiting for a chance like this. I'm not there yet, but Graham thinks the case I'm working on could prove my abilities, as long as I can solve it quickly." "What case is it?" he asked. "Remember the news about a young woman who passed away a few months ago?" she asked, glancing around and softening her voice. "Sort of. Wasn't her father a diplomat?" "Yes, that's the one. They believe it was a suicide, but she might have been blackmailed. Her parents are pushing for our government to look into it." Matt exhaled slowly. "That sounds serious. I wouldn't want that kind of pressure. Have you made any progress?" Tanya paused, considering her words. Matt noticed she was hesitant to share details about her work. "Yes, we've started to make some progress. I can't say much right now, but I'll keep you updated as we learn more. I think it's important," she said. Matt looked at Tanya sincerely, holding her gaze. "Tan, please be careful and don't take any silly risks. No job is worth it." She gave him a frustrated look at his last comment, but before she could respond, the waiter arrived with a bottle of champagne and glasses, easing the tension. "We didn't order this, Lorenzo," Matt said. Lorenzo smiled and nodded towards the restaurant owner, Antonio, who blew them a kiss. They thanked him with a nod, planning to express their gratitude in person later that evening. They ordered their meals and picked up their glasses for a toast. "To us, Tan, and the many more years we have ahead of us." They clinked their glasses and enjoyed the champagne. After finishing their starters, they both chose fish for the main course. Matt picked swordfish, prepared simply with olive oil and lemon, while Tanya opted for a more intricate dish of Dover sole with white wine, lemon, and parsley. As they chatted about life, they savored their meals, and when the table was cleared, they ordered Italian ice cream for dessert. Once the waiter left, Matt placed a small, wrapped box on the table and slid it across to Tanya. "Happy first anniversary, my one and only love." Tanya's face lit up as she took the gift and removed the ribbon. Inside were a pair of earrings, each about an inch long, featuring 2 elegant letters. One earring had a gold M in front of a silver T, connected by small spacers. The other was the opposite design, a gold T with a silver M behind it. "Oh my gosh, they are beautiful, Catch." She stood up and leaned over to give Matt a sweet kiss. "I have a surprise for you too, but I can't give it to you here. Well, I could, but I don't think Antonio would let us come back." They both laughed. Tanya switched her earrings for the new ones and admired them in her compact mirror. Dessert arrived, they settled the bill and started to leave. Antonio approached with open arms, ready for a hug. "I didn't inherit much from my mother's side, but I got her gift for seeing people who belong together. From the moment you walked into my restaurant, I knew you two were meant to be. I imagined you living a long life together, surrounded by a lot of family." Matt chuckled with the cheerful Antonio, while Tanya blushed slightly. "Well, we have 4 years before we start thinking about kids, so we have time to practice first," Matt joked. Antonio patted Matt's back and pulled them both closer for a moment. Pulling back, he looked at Tanya and asked, "Are you looking forward to being a mom one day, huh?" "You'll make a great mom, I can tell already." She smiled faintly and nodded. Matt knew that even though she had agreed before, the topic was still a little difficult for her. Their conversation was cut short by the sound of a taxi horn. Matt and Tanya thanked Antonio, then got into the cab to head home. "Tan, you seemed unsure when Antonio mentioned kids earlier. Are we still on the same page about our plans?" Matt asked. "I promised you, and I want to start a family with you when the time is right," Tanya said. "But you know I have a goal I want to achieve first. Can we talk about this later? It's still a few years away." They rode in silence, each lost in their thoughts. When the taxi dropped them at their apartment, they took the elevator up. Tanya wrapped her arms around Matt's neck, pulling him close. Their lips met in a soft kiss, familiar and warm. As the elevator doors opened, they stepped apart. "I love you, Catch, now and always," she whispered. "Antonio was right about everything." Once inside their apartment, Tanya told Matt to get a bottle of wine while she went to change. He picked out a bottle from their honeymoon in Crete, one that had meaning because it was part of their plan for the future. They had brought back 9 bottles, one for each year they would be married before starting their family. A few minutes later, Tanya entered the room. Matt smiled when he saw her. "Tan, you always know how to make me smile," he said. She was wearing something comfortable, yet it still had a playful elegance. She walked over to him with a playful look in her eyes, carrying the wine and glasses. She handed him the bottle and corkscrew. "I told you something was about to pop. Can you help me with this?" Matt inserted the corkscrew and paused. "Tan, this bottle represents the best year of my life. I look forward to a future with you." He pulled the cork from the bottle and poured 2 glasses of wine. He stood up, wrapping his arm around hers, and they drank from each other's glasses. "If this outfit is part of my anniversary gift, what else do you have for me, Tan?" "Take me to the bedroom and you'll find out." Matt playfully nudged her toward the bedroom. Standing at the end of the bed, she started to take off his shirt, planting soft kisses along his face and neck. As she gently slid his shorts off, he lay back on the bed. Kneeling at the bottom of the bed, she began to crawl up toward him, locking eyes with him. "You're the best man I know, and I'm so happy you're mine. Just relax and enjoy." She slowly moved closer, keeping her gaze on him, showing her excitement. Her attention was completely on him as she created a moment filled with tenderness and connection. She leaned in, feeling the warmth between them, and shared in that intimate moment together. They were both caught up in the feelings of joy and love, reminding each other of what they meant to one another. As they enjoyed the moment, Matt felt their connection deepen. He reached for her, knowing that they were sharing something special, and she responded, bringing them even closer together. Tanya sat up, wiping her mouth with her hand. She smiled at Matt and said softly, "Now, it's time for your anniversary present." She shifted her position, moving slowly up his body until she was sitting on his chest. "I want you to pay attention," she said with a teasing grin. Matt, confused but curious, watched her as she moved. Just as she was about to get closer, he suddenly stopped her by placing his hands on her thighs. Tanya giggled. "What's the matter, Catch?" Matt blinked in surprise. "What is that?" he asked, pointing to something just above her waist. He gently lifted the edge of her outfit to reveal a tattoo he hadn't seen before. It was new, a small design featuring a heart with the letters M and T inside, linked together with what looked like a pair of handcuffs. The detail of the tattoo gave the impression that the letters were bonded together in a symbolic way. Matt was speechless for a moment, trying to take it all in. "When did you get this?" he asked, clearly surprised but also impressed. Tanya placed a finger over his lips, smiling. "Do you like it?" she asked, keeping her hand there. He nodded in agreement. "It's something that represents us," she continued. "A mark of what we share, something permanent." She laughed lightly. "Of course, a few doctors might see it someday when we have children." Matt felt a warm sense of pride wash over him, realizing the deeper commitment they shared. He knew then that their bond was stronger than ever, and it was clear that they were both looking forward to the future. "I'm going to move my hand now," Tanya said gently. "Just enjoy this moment with me." And with that, they embraced, sharing a quiet, intimate moment, letting the closeness between them speak for itself. She gently moved back and forth, creating a sensation that made her feel good. His mouth worked on her with more pressure, causing her to breathe heavily. As this continued, her excitement built. He guided her down so he could focus on her sensitive spot. This overwhelmed her, and she clutched his head tightly, her fingers gripping his hair. Soon she was moving with a wild motion, her breathing becoming uneven. Finally, she reached a powerful moment of joy and fell beside him on the bed. As she caught her breath, she lightly ran her fingers through his hair and leaned in to place soft kisses on his cheek. When she pulled back, she noticed tears slowly rolling down her face. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded and nestled her face against his chest. "I love you, Matt, with all my heart. We'll always be together. The tears are not from sadness, but from happiness that we found each other." With that, she leaned in to kiss him tenderly before they enjoyed their special night, celebrating their first wedding anniversary. 2 weeks later, Tanya sat in a meeting room with her small team, looking over documents on their laptops. On the shared presentation screen was a picture of a wealthy Indian family next to another picture of a young Indian woman. Tanya addressed her team. "This is the Kulshrestha family, part of the Kshatriya caste, which means they hold influence both in India and here in the UK, especially as they have a senior diplomat in the Indian embassy. The young woman on the right is Leila Kulshrestha, the only daughter in this family. The extended family is quite powerful in India, involved in industries like steel, transport, land acquisition, and property investment, as well as political matters. They wanted Leila to experience different cultures, so she moved here to study politics for 3 years before returning to India for business school and joining the family business. They rented a nice 4-bedroom house and allowed her to share it with other girls, giving her a chance to live like a typical student, though she had financial support. Everything seemed fine until one day, one of her roommates found her unresponsive, having unfortunately mixed vodka and prescription drugs. The only clue was a short handwritten note to her parents, which said, "Mom, Dad, I don't want to bring you shame, but my mistake will affect our whole family, and I feel I can never make it right. I know this is wrong, but I see a way to lessen the dishonor on our family name. I realize this goes against the principle of nonviolence, but I don't know how else to prevent this embarrassment. I will wait for you in the afterlife. Leila." Tanya paused before continuing. In Hinduism, taking one's own life goes against the idea of nonviolence. To them, it's as serious as harming someone else. She didn't make this choice easily, and we need to find out why. "Okay, Sandra, what did we learn from the girls who lived with her?" Sandra, a blonde in her 30s who had just returned to work after having a baby, spoke up. If she had not taken time off, she might have been leading the team instead of Tanya. "The girls were very upset about Leila. They said she wasn't a party person and was proud to wait until marriage. When we asked about Layla's phone calls, one girl named Becky admitted she had given Layla the number for Fashionistar because they were always looking for models. Becky thought Layla could be successful there. She mentioned that Layla seemed to have a small desire to be daring, and this could be her chance. But when we asked more about Fashionistar and Becky's experience with them, she became quiet. The next week I tried to follow up with her, but she had left university and gone home. I wanted to reach her, but her family lawyer insisted any communication go through proper channels. It seems like something strange is happening at Fashionistar. Tanya thanked Sandra for her insights and turned to another team member, Jared. All right, Jared, what do you have on Fashionistar? Jared was a typical tech-savvy guy in his late 20s. He took charge of the screen and pulled up the Fashionistar website. The company's directors are Ben and Angela Webb. According to the website, they provide high-end fashion models for major online women's clothing retailers, giving new models a chance to enter the fashion world. There's a testimonial from a supposed model here, but it doesn't give enough information to figure out who it is. We've done some research and found a photo on a person's Facebook page that helps identify her as Sammy Mills, who attended the university here 4 years ago. We've also learned that she unexpectedly moved to Australia shortly after graduating. We tried reaching out to her but had no luck. Her parents mentioned that she seemed different during her university days. Any online accounts she had, like Facebook, are now gone, as if she wanted to erase her past. She started as a lively person, but by the time she left, she seemed more withdrawn, as if she was carrying a heavy burden. The images we found include some that are unique and others from smaller local businesses. There are a few from mid-sized companies, but nothing that shows they are part of larger networks. Financially, they do bring in some money, but not enough. She might earn more working at a grocery store based on what we see. Upon looking closer, I found a parent company located in Dubai that is linked to another business called Sophistidate Limited. With another click, I opened a different website. The main photo shows a well-dressed businessman in his 40s with a young woman in her 20s at a fancy restaurant. The site caters to both men and women. Besides the picture, the site promotes opportunities for men to have sophisticated companions for meals, travel, and company. For women, it speaks of the chance to be seen as successful and appealing. It feels like a place where wealthy men seek young companions. To join, it costs a hefty fee for men, giving them special access to view profiles of women worldwide. There's also a link for women interested in joining, but it mentions that only a few are chosen to be part of Sophistidate. We've confirmed that Ben Webb is listed as a director, along with 3 others, Jan Bakker from the Netherlands, Barbu Stanescu from Romania, and Emre Yilmaz from Turkey. Looking further, we found another international company listing John, Barbu, and Emre as directors, which runs various adult sites, including one with a name that suggests it targets the Middle East. It's in a different language, and accessing it requires a costly subscription, claiming exclusive content. He continued typing, appearing to log into the site, and clicked on a video thumbnail, which began to play. The video featured a young woman in a tense situation with several men. About 30 seconds in, he paused the video that showed a woman's face while a man was behaving inappropriately. He pulled up an image that had appeared earlier. The video and image looked like the same person. It was Sammy Mills, the woman who had unexpectedly moved to Australia after finishing university. "Thanks for that. Not pleasant to see, but necessary," Tanya said. "There's clearly a link between all of these, and it's obvious that Layla got involved in this to the point that she tragically took her own life. We will uncover the truth and hold these people accountable." The team murmured in agreement. We had taken a government-created Facebook profile from 3 years ago for a 23-year-old woman named Karen White. We've updated her profile to make it look genuine and have included some personal photos. Our Karen has been in Africa with her parents, running a church and school, but she has now returned to attend university and study politics. We contacted Fashionistar, sent them a photo, and have an appointment in 2 days for Karen's initial interview. So, team, let's look at the information we can gather and the tools we can use. This was the first time Tanya would go undercover on her own, fully taking on the role of someone else while controlling a major investigation. 2 days later, Tanya was dropped off a street away from the Fashionistar location. It was in a modern industrial area, located in a plain, metal-clad building with other businesses nearby. Just before she reached the entrance, Tanya spoke to herself. "I'm going in. Are we ready?" The small earpiece responded, "Roger that. We have audio and visual recording. The team is in position. The code is not interested. Can you confirm?" "Yes, I can confirm." With confirmation that the necklace Tanya wore was working as a video and sound transmitter, she, as Karen, rang the doorbell. A woman in her 40s opened the door. Well-dressed and articulate, she introduced herself as Angela Webb and welcomed Karen to Fashionistar. They walked into an open reception and office area before sitting around a coffee table. "Can I get you a drink, Karen? I'm getting myself a coffee." "Oh, yes, please. I'd like a coffee too. White, no sugar." Once Angela walked away, Karen looked around. The room had various photographs of models on the walls, along with what seemed to be certificates. Several fashion magazines were on the coffee table where they were sitting. Angela returned with a tray. She had 2 coffees, a couple of glasses, and a tall bottle of water. Karen noticed the water looked a bit cloudy. "There you go, 1 coffee and a bottle of water. If we have the photo shoot today, it can get warm under the lights, so it's important to drink enough water." She pointed to the coffee maker, showing where the drinks were. "There's a water dispenser over there. Feel free to use it. It has lemon and lime slices for flavor, which is why it looks a little cloudy. When you refill, you can see for yourself. Make as many drinks as you like throughout the day." Karen nodded and took a sip of the coffee. It seemed a bit sweet, so she guessed Angela might have mixed up their cups. Instead of making a fuss, she decided to drink the water. Angela asked Karen about her thoughts on Fashionistar, how she saw the industry, and how she felt about being in front of the camera. Karen answered smoothly with rehearsed lines, creating a solid image for the character Tanya was portraying. Angela explained how Fashionistar worked and how it was flexible enough for someone like Karen to study. She mentioned that Karen would need a collection of photographs for potential clients to see. The photos would cost £100, but Fashionistar promised that there would be enough chances to work and earn the money before it was due. "Any questions, Karen?" Karen shifted in her chair, feeling a little uneasy. "I won't have to do anything unusual for the photos, right?" Angela chuckled and gently patted Karen's knee. "You're so sweet. Nothing strange happens at Fashionistar, but some of our clients sell adult clothing and products, all well-known brands. If any of them like you, it's your choice whether to work with them. There are other models who are fine with that for the money. I promise it's all legal, and we only create ads for their products." "Thanks, that makes me feel better. I do need the money, so I'll think about it if the chance comes up." "Great. You've passed the first part. If you want to continue and join our group of models, you'll need to fill out some forms. Shall we go on?" Karen nodded. Angela organized the papers on her clipboard and handed the forms to Karen. "It's pretty standard for the industry consent forms, ownership details, fees, what we expect from you, and what we'll provide in return." Karen quickly skimmed the documents. "There's a lot to take in here all at once. Why does it ask about my personal life?" Karen asked. Angela laughed again and placed her hand gently on one of Karen's knees. "Don't worry. Nothing is wrong with those forms. See those 3 drawers behind the desk? They are filled with forms for girls who signed up and earned some good money with us. There is nothing to worry about. The personal questions are for your online profile so suppliers can see a bit about the models. This helps them decide if you fit with their products or company values." Angela chuckled. She leaned in and whispered to Karen, "Honestly, I think it's all just nonsense, but our clients see it as a kind of art. I have a simpler view. When someone sees a model in an outfit, part of them imagines it's them wearing it, and the other part looks at the clothing itself. Simple as that." With that, Karen filled in the forms, signed, and dated them. She was now officially a model for Fashionistar. Angela looked through the forms. "No way! How can someone as lovely as you be single? No boyfriend? No girlfriend?" Karen hesitated. "Nan, no, I've never had a boyfriend and, well, definitely not a girlfriend. Sorry, that's just not me. I've been in Africa helping my parents who run a church and school. There were many boys who just weren't right for me." Angela looked at Karen. "It's okay, Karen. I guess what you're saying is there weren't many boys around your age?" Karen nodded and blushed. "All I can say is that you may have missed out on some great experiences, girl." Karen blushed more as Angela laughed and gently placed her hand on Karen's knee. If you want to follow me, let's get started on your portfolio. We'll meet the photographer while I get you some makeup if you don't mind. The two women stood up and walked down a short hallway into a small studio. One end had a rack full of clothes and a little makeup station in the corner. Angela motioned for Karen to sit while she looked for the makeup. Once she found what she needed, she quickly wiped away Karen's old makeup and began applying fresh makeup. Karen heard the door open and close, then a voice next to her. "Hi, Karen. My name is Ben. I'm Angela's husband and the photographer for Fashionistar. It's nice to meet you." Karen glanced in the mirror and recognized him from what she had seen. Plus, he was the same person on the front page of the Sophistidae website, enjoying a fancy meal with a young woman. She could see why he was featured. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Ben. I hope I'll be okay for this. I'm really nervous." He placed a hand on her shoulder and gently rubbed it to reassure her. "You'll be fine. I promise you'll enjoy it as a fun experience." What girl doesn't like dressing up? She saw his reflection in the mirror, smiling at her. "Are you okay with me picking out some outfits for you to try while Angela does your makeup? I know I'm a man, but I really do have a good eye for what looks great on women." Karen giggled as she replied, "Sure, but nothing too revealing." She thought he seemed quite charming and had a vibe that surely drew many women to him. But how did his wife fit into all of this? She noticed Ben going over the papers she had filled out. "No boyfriend? I find that hard to believe, especially with someone as attractive as you. I see you just got back from Africa. Did you leave him there?" No, Ben. Actually, I've never had a boyfriend or a girlfriend." She remembered what Angela had asked her earlier. He looked at her. "Hey, don't be shy about it. You'd be surprised how many women come through our doors just like you. It's really not a bad thing. In fact, some of our clients see it as a positive." Once the makeup was done, Angela pointed her to a section behind a screen where Ben had placed some clothes on a rack. She looked around and did not see any cameras that might record her. "Okay, Karen, start with the rack from left to right. I'm pretty sure I have the right sizes, but let me know if you need something different. I'll set up the cameras while you get changed." The first outfit was a pair of slacks and a loose-fitting sweater with some sturdy boots. Karen came out and followed his instructions on posing and expressions while he clicked away. Towards the end, he stood close behind her, placing his hands on her waist to help her pose. She noticed his strong cologne mixed with the warmth of his voice. He suddenly asked her about her time in Africa, where she had stayed and what it was like. Caught off guard, she focused on the information about her persona that had been crafted for her. Concentrating hard, she answered smoothly, hoping it sounded genuine. Ben then shared some of his experiences from Africa, occasionally asking if she could relate to the places he mentioned. She felt he was checking to see if she was who she claimed to be. The photo shoot went on, though she needed to take breaks due to feeling more thirsty than usual. They went through several outfits, noticing that they became more stylish with each change: shorter skirts, fitted dresses, higher heels, and snug tops. Every now and then, he would ask her to pose a certain way and then adjust her position himself. Each time, his touch lingered a bit longer and he stood a little closer. At one point, he had her stand while he placed his hands on her hips, guiding her into a confident posture. He walked around to face her, then took her hands and placed them on her hips, moving them slightly to the right spot. He held her hands for a moment longer than needed, making her feel the warmth of his grip. "That's it. Hold that pose for me." His face was very close to hers, and she noticed something in his eyes. She also sensed a familiar smell in the air. Suddenly she felt embarrassed, realizing it was her own feelings that were making her blush. Ben smiled, then stepped back to enjoy the view before him. He turned and returned to his camera, snapping several pictures while giving her instructions to change her pose. She went back to the changing area and began to take off the outfit hanging there. Ben, I'm not sure I can wear the last outfit." She heard him chuckle. "Just take it off the hanger and think of it as just another piece of clothing. There's nothing different than what you would wear at the beach." "But I wouldn't wear a bikini at the beach. I'd feel too shy." "Really? What about your boyfriend? He must have seen you in less." "I told you I don't have one. The only person who has seen me in my underwear as an adult is a doctor." "Wow, a true good girl. I respect that. How about this? I'll call Angela to come in and she can help you feel more comfortable." "Would you? I'm really nervous about this outfit. Of course, I'll go get her. Karen rolled up the black stockings and quickly put on the underwear, hoping it would cover her tattoo. Luckily, it almost did. Lastly, she put on the black balcony bra that made her feel different. Angela came in and walked behind the screen. Oh my goodness, look at you. You look amazing, just a moment. She went to the makeup station, grabbed some items, and freshened up Karen's look. She laughed as she finished. Go show him what you've got. With some nerves, Karen stepped out from behind the screen to face Ben. Quick, get me a chair. I think I might faint. Karen, you are a beautiful young woman. Never be shy about who you are. He started to guide her on some poses, asking her to bend slightly and look at the camera. After a few shots, he lowered the camera and walked over to her. We really need to perfect this pose. Do you mind if I help position you? Karen nodded. He stood behind her and gently placed his hands on her hips. Now move your legs apart just a little. That's good. A bit more. Okay, stop. He crouched down behind her, guiding her into the right position. As his hand moved towards her thighs, it lingered longer than necessary. Tanya felt nervous as sweat began to appear on her forehead and her face turned red. He then asked her to put her hands on her knees, keeping her arms straight down. Being so close to him felt overwhelming, and a feeling inside her grew stronger, making her believe he could sense her nervousness. He stood in front of her, and her face was at his level. I'm going to adjust your head for this shot. Are you okay with that? He asked. She nodded, agreeing to his request. He got closer, and she could see the outline of his body through his pants. With his hands on her shoulders, he shifted her position slightly. There was a brief silence as he adjusted her head, tilting it until she was looking in a different direction. Then he crouched down so his face was just inches away from hers. In a soft voice, he said, You look great. Tanya felt embarrassed as her body reacted in ways she didn't expect. She could feel the heat on her skin and was aware that he probably noticed her nervousness too. She was torn between wanting this moment to end quickly and wishing to escape the situation entirely. Over the next few minutes, he had her pose in various ways that felt uncomfortable. Despite her efforts to remain calm, she could feel herself becoming more anxious. She was relieved when it was finally over and she could put her own clothes back on. In the office, she sat with Angela, discussing what would happen next. Angela explained that a limited number of photos would be shared on a special part of the website for clients, along with Tanya's biography. New faces were always in demand. They would review the client responses when Tanya returned and decide on the best photos for her portfolio. You did really well, Tanya. I hope you enjoyed it. We should get back to you within a week, and I'll send that contract to you later today, Angela said. As she stood to leave, Ben came into the office holding a printed photo. He handed it to Tanya. It was from the last shoot, showing her in a pose she hadn't imagined. Tanya looked at the photo. The woman in the picture seemed different to her. Karen stood in her black heels, her legs covered in stockings, feeling a mix of emotions. Heavy makeup and bright red lipstick completed her look. Her thoughts raced, leaving her confused, caught between feelings of unease and something else she didn't want to admit. She looked up at Ben, feeling a sense of tension. As he leaned over her, handing her a photograph, Karen noticed his finger briefly touched her. His words lingered in her mind. Don't be afraid to embrace your strengths, Karen. You're a truly beautiful woman, he said before giving her a quick kiss on the cheek and walking away. Angela followed, offering her a handshake and a polite kiss on the cheek before escorting Karen to the door. Once outside, Karen's persona slipped away and she became Tanya again. Speaking into a hidden microphone, she communicated with her team. I'm about 30 seconds away. Get ready to open the door. Are the audio devices working? Yes, boss. Both the studio and office are transmitting sound, came the reply. Earlier, Karen had discreetly placed small audio bugs under the coffee table and a seat in the makeup area. Now they could listen to conversations at Fashionistar for the next 48 hours before the bugs' batteries ran out. A few moments later, Tanya entered a van disguised as a builder's vehicle. Inside, she was handed a headset that allowed her to listen to the live transmissions. On the other end, she heard a conversation between Ben and Angela. Well, what did you think? I'm honestly surprised by her transformation. 1 minute she's quiet and shy, the next she's a confident, bold woman, Ben said. Angela added with a laugh. I think we can really make something big out of this. Her reaction earlier was priceless. They both laughed together. Tanya listened in silence, her mind focused on the mission at hand. She clearly has a hidden side beneath her calm appearance. Tanya felt a shiver at the remark, and her face turned bright red from embarrassment. She knew everyone on the team had heard it, and it felt like they all froze in place, not daring to move or speak. She took off her headset, needing to shift everyone's attention quickly. Okay, Jared and Tom, you stay here until they finish up. Can you write a report about anything important from the recordings and share it with the team, please? Sandra, come back with me. Can you look over the contract when it arrives? Tom, if you and Barry can handle the undercover work here tomorrow, let us know if anything raises a concern. Otherwise, please write a report by the end of the day tomorrow. Leaving the van, Tanya and Sandra got into their car and started the drive back to their base. I'm really glad it was you who went in and not me, Tan, Sandra said. Tanya glanced at her. I didn't think it was risky. Everything was under control. You really think so? If I had been there, I might have gotten in way over my head. The live feed felt really exaggerated. Come on, Sandra, you're married. You wouldn't do anything like that to Mike, would you? Listen, Tan, after you've been married for 10 years and had a child, your husband might prefer to focus on his favorite TV show instead of being with you when some exciting person like that comes along. It gets tempting, believe me. Tanya looked at her colleague, surprised by the comment. You're married and are happy too, so don't think I didn't notice those comments about certain things. Once again, Tanya felt her face grow hot and found herself speechless. She imagined Ben standing in front of her with an undeniable presence. She unconsciously licked her lips. When Tanya walked into their apartment just after 6, she smelled pork cooking. When she first met Matt, she impressed him with her cooking skills, especially with Greek dishes, and over the last year, Matt had learned enough to be nearly as good at making Greek food as she was. Hi, Tan. I'm making pork souvlaki with salad. Is that okay with you? Matt asked. Ooh, thanks. It's been a long day. Go sit down. I'll pour you some wine and dinner will be ready in 10 minutes. 10 minutes later, they sat down to eat dinner, with a glass of wine for Tanya and water for Matt. Looks like you've had a busy day, Tan. Working hard, huh? He remarked. Yep, I was out on my first major undercover assignment today, plus I'm leading the team, she replied. Let's toast to that, Matt said with a smile. I'm sorry I have to work tonight, but I'll just stick to water, Tanya said. They tapped their glasses together. Is this some top-secret mission? You know, like black suits and sunglasses? Matt joked. Tanya rolled her eyes and shook her head. No secret mission. We're looking into what we think is a shady modeling agency. Matt's expression shifted. What do you mean by shady, Tan? What are you really doing undercover? Remember our anniversary dinner when I mentioned the Indian diplomat's daughter who passed away? We think there's a connection. That's the first part, but what exactly are you doing undercover? Matt noticed a flicker of concern in her eyes before she answered. Today I went in as a model for an interview and did a photo shoot with them. They mainly work with online clothing brands. Matt was intrigued. So, you've been a model today? I wish you had told me that beforehand. What kind of clothes are you modeling? Tanya hesitated. She knew she couldn't share everything. Just the usual clothes you'd find at any major online store: skirts, dresses, tops, shoes, and boots. Matt raised an eyebrow. If you think they're shady, did they do anything that made you worry? Did they ask you to dress in a way that felt off? Tanya didn't expect him to ask so directly. Oh no, the company is run by a couple in their 40s and they were with me the whole time. Matt could tell there was more she wasn't sharing. For the first time, he sensed that she wasn't being completely truthful. Tan, I know your job can be tough, but please be safe. Are you alone in there? Yes, but I'm wearing a hidden camera with audio. The team is in a van just around the corner recording everything. That makes me feel better. I'd rather know what's going on, but I don't need all the details of your work. I trust you, but it's the others out there that worry me. The next few hours felt a bit tense. Matt wished Tanya had been more open about her job. Usually, he had to tell her to stop sharing so many details. He thought he might need to ask more questions if she kept holding back. After Matt left for work, Tanya relaxed in a warm bath, lighting candles and bringing her drink with her. As she soaked, her mind drifted back to earlier that day and some of the interactions she had. The thoughts lingered longer than she expected, and she tried to push them away. Tanya's thoughts drifted into a strange dream where she imagined being close to someone in a very personal way. Suddenly she woke up, realizing she had been relaxing in the bathtub for too long. She sat up quickly and was shocked to see her face was warm, and she felt an unusual ache in her body. Tears filled her eyes, as she had never thought about anyone else like that, except for her husband. After trying to sleep, her dreams took a different turn. She found herself in various positions, either bent over or lying on a bed. In each dream she imagined being very close to Ben, feeling his intense gaze on her. When she was bent over the edge of the bed, she felt an overwhelming sense of anxiety about her thoughts. As she slowly started to wake up, she noticed she was sweating and breathing heavily. It struck her that she had been lost in her own thoughts. She quickly felt a wave of nausea as she realized that even in her dreams, she had been thinking about someone she barely knew, who might not be the best person. In a panic, she ran to the bathroom, struggling as her stomach turned. Tanya had a restless night. While awake, she found herself thinking about memories with her husband, Matt, but when she fell asleep, her thoughts turned to Ben again. At 6 in the morning, she decided to go to work early. She didn't want to face Matt feeling the way she did. To her horror, she noticed some damp spots on the bed that revealed her troubled night. She quickly changed the sheets, hiding the old ones deep in the laundry basket. As she ate breakfast, images of Matt's expressions from the previous day filled her mind. She knew he was upset about their conversation. She wished to protect him from the harder parts of her job, even if it meant not being completely honest. Deep down, she felt an overwhelming guilt from her dreams, as if she had betrayed her husband. She left a note saying she had gone to work early. She signed it with love and added a few kisses. At work, her team gathered to discuss the previous day and plan for what was next. When Jared went over the recordings from the day before, he played a conversation between Ben and Angela in their office a few hours after Tanya had left. "Did you see the responses in the group chat?" Ben asked. "Yeah. They all think Karen is a great choice. In fact, Jan and Emre want to come for her interview. Can we set it up for next Wednesday? Book the whole afternoon from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m.? Ben, are you sure? It didn't go well with the last person we brought in?" That might be true, but those messages clearly show interest. She seems innocent at first, but I believe there's much more to her. Just keep your distance from me. After all these years, I prefer a different kind of company. Speaking of which, did you manage to get in touch with that girl? Terry? Yes, let's just say she helped settle part of her debt in a unique way. It might not have the perks, but it's nice having connections like that. They all laughed as the recorded segment ended. All right. We're certain we are up against some serious issues here, so we need to take more action. Sandra, can you try to find this Terry? Check the university for any women named Terry, and see if we can spot someone in the footage we've gathered. No problem. I'll start on that. I also have something important to share. Remember Sammy Mills, the girl who went to Australia? I asked the police there to look into it, and they got back to me. She was reported missing a couple of weeks ago by her boyfriend, but there's no word on where she might be. No phone calls, media activity, or bank transactions since then. Good job, Sandra. Contact Interpol and let them know we think there could be a connection to our case. Let's get some extra help. This brings us to a possible operation next week. Any ideas? For this meeting, Graham, Tanya's boss, decided to sit in. He had years of experience in undercover work. Tanya, explain how you are planning to keep safe. Listening to that recording, it sounds like you're stepping into a risky situation, and we know how important it is to get this right. We'll use the same approach as yesterday, plus we already have 2 audio devices set up. That's not enough, Tanya. You all need to think this through more carefully, consider every possibility, and make sure you're prepared. I will join you again before next week, but I can't do anything until I know you have properly protected the team, especially yourself. He apologized and said he had to go to another meeting, then he left. The team exchanged glances and Tanya spoke up first. I didn't see that coming. Let's put our heads together. I won't let this slip away from us. Throughout the day, the team improved their strategy. The next morning, they went over it with Graham, who supported their plan. The only change was that if they didn't hear Tanya's voice for 2 minutes, the team would proceed with the raid and use an extra device to alert them if Tanya needed help. They organized the additional resources and applied for a search warrant for the following Wednesday. The team talked about the contract that Tanya, also known as Karen, had signed. Legal experts reviewed it and concluded it wouldn't hold up in any UK court and likely in many other places. The £100 fee they discussed was actually per photo used, and the promise to recover the fee through earnings was tied to the holding group, not to Fashionistar as a company. If the loan for the photos wasn't repaid within 30 days, it would accrue interest at 300% annually. It was clear how girls became trapped and vulnerable. The next question was how they went from vulnerable to being exploited. As the days passed, Tanya began to feel the emotions from her visit to Fashionistar fade, especially the troubling images of Ben that had caused her distress. She managed to let go of those thoughts most of the time. From her office, she noticed the team watching clips from the portfolio shoot and found herself drawn to a moment when Ben stood in front of her, looking a certain way. She quickly turned away before her body could inadvertently react to what she saw. At home, there was a slight tension. Neither Matt nor Tanya could show it to visitors, but they both felt it. On Tuesday evening, before Matt left for his night shift, Tanya spoke to him. "I'm sorry about last week. I know you care about me, but this is my job. I just wanted you to know that tomorrow we are shutting down their operation." "Are you going back undercover, Tan?" "Yes, I am. The difference now is that we have enough information to think they might try to manipulate me." "I'm not sure I understand, Tan. Are we talking about a game or something more serious?" Tanya realized that trying to be vague was only testing Matt's patience. "This is classified work, Matt. I shouldn't even tell you this much. If I tell you that more than 20 officers are supporting me and Graham has checked the plans and approved them, does that make you feel better?" "It does, Tan. But there's always something unexpected that can happen. Every day I tell myself that no matter what, I will come home to you. Please, please remember that. I know you want to succeed, but don't push too hard." Tanya felt frustrated, but knew this wasn't the right moment to show it. "Matt, I think about us every time I go to work. I promise it won't hurt our relationship." Matt nodded, but still felt uneasy. He worried that Tanya was too focused on being the best and wondered how far she would go for success. He was glad that Graham was involved because he cared about Tanya and wouldn't let her fail. He kissed her, told her he loved her, and then he left. Tanya had a restless night. She thought about the different ways they might try to pressure her and kept reviewing the safety plans they had made to ensure her protection. Eventually, she managed to fall asleep. The next morning, she didn't want to see her husband, so she left before he got home. She wrote him a note saying she would be safe and that she loved him deeply. Once she got to work, she knew he would not be home long and sent him a WhatsApp message like the note. After that, she put her phone in her pocket, took off her wedding and engagement rings, and focused on work. They spent the morning going over the plan, checking that the necklace with the camera and microphone was working. She also had a ring that could alert for immediate help when needed. At 11, all the participants were called into a briefing room, and Tanya explained the details, including the warrant and what the investigators should look for. When she finished, Graham spoke to the group. "I believe we have everything we need to catch these people, but our government wants to ensure we get the job done. Good luck, everyone. I know you will make us proud." With that, Operation Dressdown began. At 12:30, Tanya quickly exited the builder's van and checked the audio and video to make sure everything was ready. Then she headed toward the Fashionistar building, transforming into Karen, the aspiring model, just like the previous week. This time, she was aware that something challenging was waiting for her. She rang the bell and quickly checked the audio and video connection one last time. The last thing she heard was, "Remember, Code Red is not good." "Karen, it's great to see you again. I'm sorry about the heat. The heating system seems to be stuck on high." Angela welcomed Karen in and locked the door behind her. She hugged Karen and gave her a light kiss on both cheeks as a friendly greeting. Karen felt uneasy at the touch, sensing Angela's strong interest in her. "Oh my goodness, you will love the photos picked for your portfolio. The few we've uploaded so far have received a lot of attention. We expect a call today to discuss some work opportunities." They moved to the coffee table where Angela brought a bottle of fancy water from the dispenser. She then made herself a latte from the machine. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't think. I just went into autopilot. Are you okay with the water or do you want tea or coffee instead? No, I'm fine with the water, thanks. Sorry about that. Just like last time, please keep the bottle with you and you can refill it at the dispenser anytime. They sat down to review the photos for the portfolio, and Karen was surprised by how great they looked. It was clear that Ben was a talented photographer. When they reached the photos that were more revealing, Karen noticed there were many more of those than of the other outfits. Just then, Ben walked in and sat next to Karen. He sat close, and the scent of his cologne filled the air as he took her hand and kissed the back of it gently. Karen shifted in her seat, feeling a little flustered. These are some of the best shots I've ever taken. Just look at this one. He opened the portfolio to a photo of Karen bending over with a strong look. She felt like the outfit was very revealing, and she was aware of how it looked in the images. Over the next 15 minutes, they looked through the photos, and Karen took several sips of her water. It was quite warm in the room, and she thought about how hot it felt. They chose the photos for the portfolio, and Angela and Ben reassured her that only their clients would see them, and they owned the rights to them. Knowing this, Karen agreed to include 2 of the more daring photos, making a total of 15 images. Suddenly the phone rang, and Angela walked back to her desk to answer it. Hello, Jan. Yes, we're with Karen now. She is reviewing her portfolio photos. Let me walk over and put you on speakerphone. As Angela moved closer, Ben whispered to Karen that Jan represented a leading lingerie brand in the UK well known and respected. What he didn't realize was that she knew Jan Backer, one of the partners in crime. From their earlier conversation, she suspected he was here and that everything was just a trick to bring her in. Hello, Karen. Nice to speak with you. We've been looking at your photos and think you could be very successful in our market. You seem to capture both innocence and charm, and we really love that. Would you like to work with us, Karen? Oh, yes, Jan, I would love that. Great. Please put Angela back on so we can discuss what we need. Angela returned to her desk and took the phone off speaker before continuing the conversation. I believe you have what it takes to succeed, she said. Ben placed his hand on Karen's knee as he spoke. She noticed it but didn't pull away. Instead, she felt a strange mix of excitement and heat. Feeling a bit overwhelmed, she took a drink of her water and decided to pour another glass. The attention from Ben made her feel even warmer. Angela returned with a consent form she had printed out. It included Karen's name, the company she would work for, and the payment amount, which was £800 for 4 photographs. Karen picked up the pen and was about to sign when Ben's hand reached out to stop her. Before you sign, are you clear that these are going to be lingerie shots? They'll be similar to the last set you did, but you'll be featured online for their marketing. I won't do anything more than we did last week. Nothing revealing? No, I promise it will just be you in some lingerie, nothing inappropriate. Karen took the form, signed it, and dated it. Wonderful choice, Karen. Want to get started now? They have already sent the outfits they want you to model. Ben stood up and offered his hand to help Karen up. She felt a bit dizzy as she stood. Are you okay? It might be the heat. Have some more water, he suggested. Karen took a few sips of her water and walked with Angela and Ben to the studio. Angela sat down to refresh Karen's makeup. When Karen looked in the mirror, she felt like she was seeing someone different. The reflection showed a confident woman ready for the shoot. Subconsciously, she ran her tongue over her lips. Meanwhile, Ben set up his camera and arranged a selection of outfits on a clothes rack. Once the makeup was finished, she stepped behind the screen to change into the first outfit, which was quite similar to the one she had worn before. Ben gave Karen directions for posing but kept his distance, never physically adjusting her himself. After a few costume changes, she found herself wearing high black boots and underwear that felt unusual. Angela, there's no bra with this outfit, Karen pointed out. That's right, honey, Angela replied. They're only showcasing the boots and the knickers for the online catalog. They want a few separate shots and some with both together. Are you okay with that? Karen felt a little unsure, remembering they said she wouldn't have to reveal too much. Her memory felt hazy, but she covered herself with her hands and walked out cautiously. All right, Karen, remember the first pose? Now place your hands on your knees and lean forward, looking over your shoulder at me. Karen followed the instructions, bending forward. The boots made her legs appear longer, and she didn't think too much about her exposed body or the odd nature of the request. Ben approached, adjusting her hands slightly, and Karen felt nervous but remained still. He leaned in closer, whispering, "You look perfect like this." Karen stayed quiet, feeling a mix of emotions. Ben stepped back and started taking photos, coming in close for more detailed shots, focusing on her poses. Back in the van, Graham listened to the audio feed. He was concerned about the direction things were taking. Tanya, playing her undercover role, seemed to be getting too involved in the situation. Graham checked his watch, knowing they might need to intervene soon if things didn't improve. "Okay, Tanya, we're done for now," Ben said finally. "Go sit by the makeup desk while I send these photos to Jan for approval. We'll see if they want to reshoot anything." Ben left the room with Angela, leaving Karen sitting alone, lost in thought. Karen had lost track of time while she waited, but eventually Angela came back in and sat with her. "I'm sorry to tell you, Karen, but Jan's company has changed their mind. They don't think the last photos worked as they hoped." Karen started to cry. "Do they think I'm not pretty?" "Oh no, it's not that. They think you look too innocent for the products. They were hoping to see a bit more of a daring side in the pictures. Don't worry, there will be more chances." "Okay, I'll change and go home then." "Wait, Karen. We have other projects you might be perfect for. Just remember, you owe our company £1,500 in the next month, or we will add interest." Karen recalled that they had discussed £100 before. "I thought you said it was £100, she asked, puzzled. "Don't you remember? I made it clear it was £100 per photo, and you signed the agreement. Did I? I can't remember. Everything's a bit mixed up in my head." "Don't worry about it. We have another part of our business that pays better than modeling. It's called Sophistidate, where you can enjoy nice dinners with distinguished gentlemen. Would you like to meet someone like Ben?" Yes, that sounds nice. Ben, yes, that sounds good." In her clouded mind, she imagined the evening with Ben. Angela placed a new set of papers in front of Karen and she signed them without reading them. Taking the forms, Angela walked through a door, leaving Karen alone again. "Karen, Karen!" Startled, Karen looked up as Angela called from the doorway, motioning for her to come over. It took her a moment to remember where she was at the modeling studio. Karen got off the chair and walked towards Angela. She felt a bit unsteady, wondering if it was because of the boots she was wearing. It didn't occur to her that her outfit was quite simple. Following Angela into a smaller room, she noticed there were some comfy chairs, a sofa, and a big bed. 3 men were sitting, including Ben, who stood up and gestured for her to come closer to the center of the room. Karen felt she might know these men, but couldn't quite remember from where. If she had looked closer, she would have seen the lights and video cameras recording the scene. "Karen, welcome to Sophistidate." Karen stood there, unsure of what was happening. A voice inside her urged her to leave. She reached down and fiddled with her necklace, trying to distract herself. Karen absent-mindedly played with a ring on her finger, feeling like there was something important about it, but she couldn't quite remember. A voice was speaking to her, muffled at first, but then it became clear as Ben slapped her across the face, splitting her lip. He yanked the necklace from her neck, throwing it across the room. "I don't like repeating myself. Focus on me, not that necklace," he growled. "I'll ask again. Are you ready for your interview with Sophistidate?" Karen's mind was foggy. "Interview?" she muttered, her words slurring. "I don't remember anything about an interview." Ben grabbed her hand, forcing her to rub the front of his trousers. "But you remember this, don't you?" he said with a smirk. "Why don't you get on your knees?" Even though Ben had released her hand, Karen found herself continuing the motion, her thoughts clouded. She began to kneel, using Ben for support. But just as she started, the door burst open. In the command truck nearby, Graham had been listening to the audio feed. His team had been monitoring everything, and he knew it was time to act. The audio had become garbled, but what they could hear was enough to make Graham shout into the radio, "Move in now! Secure the area, and protect our operative!" The sound of screeching tires filled the air as police cars and vans raced to the location, ready to intervene and put an end to the situation. The main focus was on the team with the battering ram since they were parked nearby, ready to act. As soon as their van turned the corner, they found a large truck blocking their way. The truck couldn't move because it was being unloaded. The team had no choice but to run the 300 meters with the battering ram, joined by other units in the same situation, all heading to the same building. When they finally reached the entrance, the double doors easily buckled under the ram's force, and the sound of glass breaking echoed as small pieces fell to the floor. The metal doors were now damaged as a group of police officers surged into the building. Inside, in a soundproof room, the people inside were unaware of the chaos outside as another battering ram was breaking through barriers. Karen felt overwhelmed with confusing thoughts and emotions. She couldn't remember things feeling this intense before. Her attention was suddenly drawn to Ben, whose eyes held a gleam of desire. "Come on, you can do this," he encouraged. At the sound of his voice, she felt a mix of fear and anxiety. Without knowing why, she wanted to please him and tried to adjust herself as he took charge. Suddenly, the door flew open, and police officers rushed into the room. Ben, startled, released his grip. Karen slowly realized something was very wrong. In that moment of clarity, driven by instinct, she bit down hard. Ben let out a cry of pain. Before the police could reach him, Ben swung his fist, hitting Karen and knocking her unconscious. Tanya woke up in a hospital bed, her face hurting and her head pounding. As she looked around, it all came together. She was in a hospital room. Her boss, Graham, was sitting in a chair nearby. "Hey, welcome back. How are you feeling?" he asked gently. "Like I've been hit by a truck," she replied, trying to shake off the daze. "How did I end up here?" she asked softly. "Let's take a step back, Tanya. Can you tell me what you remember from the moment you knocked on the door of Fashionistar?" Tanya recounted her day, mentioning how hot it was and how she kept drinking water. She remembered looking at photos in the portfolio and receiving a call about the photo shoot. She felt upset at one point, but she wasn't sure why. Then a dream came to mind. "What was the dream about, Tanya? It's okay, no matter how awkward it feels. It's important," he urged. She swallowed hard. "I was with Matt, but he looked different. It was confusing," she admitted, her voice trembling. She rubbed her throat as the realization hit her, and tears started to flow. "They must have put something in your drink. That's why you lost track of everything, and I'm sorry for letting it go this far. I thought you were just pushing yourself for a solid case. Remember the first trip? Did you have any strange thoughts then?" She recalled the image of Ben and the unsettling feelings that followed her for days. Her cheeks flushed, and she looked down. "I'm sorry, Graham. I thought it was just the photo shoot and being around an attractive man. You think I was drugged?" "We found 2 boxes by the water cooler labeled Day 1 and Day 2. Tests are being done, but we suspect they contained drugs like Rohypnol and ecstasy. The first was likely mild enough not to alarm you, and they might have been waiting for stronger effects later. If you had told us after the first shoot, we could have handled it better on the next one." "I'm really sorry, Graham. I should have thought of that. I let everyone down." "No, Tanya, you did your best. But what happened wasn't part of the job. It's going to get complicated, but the Home Office is going to handle it quickly, and it should fade away. Still, this is about you. You're a married woman, and your husband doesn't know anything yet." As Tanya's mind cleared, she started to process the seriousness of the situation. "Oh no, what time is it? What will I say to Matt?" Panic surged in her stomach. "It's 6 p.m., Tanya. You'll need to stay here for the night for observation." "Oh no, Graham, I can't do that. What will I tell Matt?" "Just tell him the truth. Come on, you've talked to enough people to know that lies don't last forever and usually cause big problems." Tanya began to cry. "I can't, Graham. Things got complicated between us leading up to this. I told him I was the main undercover agent, but he made me promise to stay safe. I assured him I wouldn't put the job before us. He won't be able to handle what's happened." Graham reached out and took her hand. "So, how do you want to handle this?" Tanya took a moment to gather herself before answering. "Can you text Matt and tell him I'm busy with interviews after the operation? Tell him I'll be home late tonight. I need to be out of here and home before 7 in the morning when he gets back." Graham sighed and looked at Tanya's tired face. He could see the bruises on her cheek, the dark circles under her eyes, and the cut on her lip. "Just this once, Tanya. I don't like it, but I understand the tough spot you're in. But your face is a real mess. You won't be able to hide it from him. What's your plan for everything else that's happened?" She began to cry softly again and shook her head. I don't know, Graham. I need time to think before I decide anything. On that note, I've made a decision. You're taking a week off. There's a trauma specialist outside to talk to you. Then we'll get your statement about the operation. I'll speak with the doctors, and if they agree, we can get you home before 7 in the morning. But promise me, Tanya, think carefully about how you'll explain this to Matt. Remember, every action has consequences. Tanya nodded. Graham patted her hand and stood to leave. Tanya, really think hard about keeping things from Matt. As your friend, not just your boss, I urge you not to. Problems tend to come back when you least expect them. I'll make sure you get all the support you need to get through this. Tanya looked at him and nodded weakly. Graham felt a sense that she might make a mistake. He didn't like it, but it was up to her, and she would have to handle the results. One last thing. He took her wedding and engagement rings from his pocket and handed them to her. I found these on your desk with your phone. You hide them well. It wouldn't look good to go home without them. Barely able to speak, she said thank you and took the rings. As she put them on, Graham left and called for the trauma specialist to enter the room. In the next few hours, people came and went. Along with doctors and nurses, she had her first session with the police trauma specialist, which led to 3 more sessions. Then she met with 2 senior detectives about the operation called Dress Down. They let her know that Angela Webb quickly tried to make a deal to lessen her punishment. But even then, there wouldn't be much mercy because of how serious the situation was. By 2 a.m., she was alone and finally managed to fall into a restless sleep. At 5:30 a.m., a nurse woke her up and told her she could go home now. A policewoman was waiting outside to take her home, so she put on the clothes from the day before, although she vaguely remembered they weren't what she was wearing when she arrived at the hospital. As she was about to leave, the nurse gave her a bag with her belongings, which felt heavy. Looking inside, she found some boots and other clothes that made her feel uncomfortable. She had to suppress her feelings as she wanted to react, but she knew doing so would mean returning to the hospital. She left with the policewoman and tossed the bag into the first trash bin she saw. At 6:15, she walked into her apartment, still exhausted and in pain. Looking in the tall mirror in the hallway, she was shocked by her reflection. Her face looked terrible. The bruises around her eyes were a mix of yellow and purple. Her cheek was swollen, and her lip was puffy from being hurt. She knew it would be hard to explain this later. She wrote a note for Matt, telling him she was tired and would sleep in the spare room. When she woke up at 2 p.m., it was hard for her to swallow. She quietly walked into the kitchen and snuck up behind Matt, wrapping her arms around him and giving him a gentle kiss on the back of the neck. "I love you, Catch," she said softly. Matt turned around, surprised, and when he saw her, Tanya took a deep breath, preparing for his reaction. "Tan, what happened?" He pulled her close and she started to cry softly. "I'm so sorry it turned bad at the end. When they realized what was going on, one of them tried to get past me. I got hit a few times and I didn't expect it to happen so fast. All I could think about was what you said before I left." Just when she was about to tell him the truth, she hesitated. She knew that revealing everything right now could harm their marriage. After a few minutes, they pulled away, and Matt made them some tea. They sat at the dining table while he began to ask the questions that had been building in his mind. As he thought of questions, Tanya mentally prepared her answers, wanting to convince him with a version of events that would keep him from digging deeper. For the next 15 minutes, they exchanged questions and answers, both feeling more uneasy as the conversation went on. Finally, Matt slammed his fist on the table, clearly upset. "What if something worse had happened, Tan? What if they had drugged you? You didn't keep your promise. Did you even try? I could have lost you. Please, the job is just a job. Don't put it above us, Tanya. That won't end well." Matt walked to the sink and started washing dishes to avoid the conversation. Tanya went to take a shower, feeling uneasy about what would happen if Matt ever found out the truth, especially after what he just said. The next few days at home were quiet. Matt had 4 days off, and Tanya was told to rest at home for 5 days. Her face didn't look good, so she didn't want to go out more than necessary. They decided to decorate their bedroom together. A couple of days later, it was all done. That evening, Tanya made a nice steak dinner and they shared a bottle of red wine. After dinner, they cuddled on the couch and watched TV. Matt reached down and picked up a rectangular jewelry box he had hidden beside the sofa and handed it to Tanya. I'm sorry if I've seemed harsh, Tanya. Seeing you the other day made me realize how dangerous your job can be. It felt like a wake-up call, and I'm sorry if I overreacted. He gave her the box. When she opened it, she found a necklace like the one she had worn while working undercover. Instead of feeling happy, she remembered when it had been ripped from her neck. She sat there, frozen, as memories flooded back that she had tried to forget. Are you going to say something, Tanya? Maybe thank you or even a kiss? I'm sorry, you caught me by surprise. It's beautiful. Her heart raced and she felt tightness in her chest. She knew she needed to hold back her emotions. She leaned over and kissed him softly. Matt stood up and moved in front of her to put on the necklace. He leaned down and kissed her before kneeling beside her on the sofa. He tried to share a moment of passion, but she felt unsure. She hid her discomfort, but Matt noticed she wasn't fully present. Can we take it slow, Matt? I'm not feeling great right now. Sorry, I thought you might be in the mood. Whenever you feel ready, just let me know. Something felt off. He got up, and they cuddled on the couch for the next couple of hours, watching TV before heading to bed. They lay there in silence, looking at the ceiling until sleep took over. The following weeks were filled with meetings and discussions about the operation. They began to investigate how things went wrong, uncovering the troubling truths behind the crimes that had been committed. There had been many women who had suffered the same path of exploitation that Tanya had uncovered, each enduring terrible humiliation. Among the video files stored on a server was one of Layla, the young Indian woman whose case triggered the investigation. The men involved had cruelly taunted her, claiming they had taken her innocence. In every video, Angela could be seen in the background, relishing in the suffering of the women as she filmed. Using advanced investigative techniques, authorities began identifying and discreetly contacting victims. Slowly, women came forward, bravely sharing their stories of the abuse they had endured. The women were trapped in a cruel scheme. After being assaulted, they were shown videos of themselves, altered to make it appear as if they had participated willingly. They were then blackmailed, threatened with exposure if they didn't comply. The videos would be shared online and sent to their families and contacts if they didn't agree to be controlled. The women were graded and sent to clients, supposedly for harmless dinner dates or events, but in reality, they were forced into prostitution. They received very little of the money made from their exploitation, and the constant threat of exposure kept them in line. For some, even moving away didn't bring freedom, as the network's reach extended far. The videos were also uploaded to a website, targeting a specific market in the Middle East. The site allowed users to request custom videos or, for a steep price, arrange real-life encounters where their fantasies would be acted out. The hidden financial records revealed several large transactions, including one just weeks before the investigation began. Authorities feared that one of the women had recently gone through another terrible ordeal and worked hard to identify her. In addition to the main investigation, a counterclaim was filed by Ben Webb, who sought damages against the woman known as Karen White. He claimed she had injured him during an incident. However, the case was dismissed quickly in court. The judge ruled that because Karen had been drugged and assaulted, she could not be held responsible for her actions during that time. The police continued to build their case, determined to bring justice to the victims and dismantle the entire operation. The judge had been told by the government to make a decision before the case even went to court. 5 weeks had passed since that difficult day, and Tanya felt very stressed about everything around her. She had finished her sessions with the police trauma specialist, but had not been honest when they talked about her home life since the incident. Tanya told the specialist that her relationship with her husband was just as strong as it was before. She thought that admitting they had struggles might hurt her chances for a promotion, so she lied. The internal review of the operation was mostly done. The first report said that while the planning could have been better, it was not due to any one person's failure. Tanya knew that her relationship with her husband was not as close as it used to be. Since the day Matt had tried to become closer by giving her a necklace, he hadn't pushed her, but their marriage felt heavy with sadness. While Tanya tried to find a way to improve things, Matt made an effort to reconnect. He planned a special dinner for just the two of them at a new restaurant that received great reviews. On Saturday, he surprised her with some pampering. He arranged for her to have her hair done, nails done, and even a shopping trip to find a new dress and shoes. He noticed her pics were a bit plain, though he had to hold back because some of her choices revealed too much skin. They finally found a dress they both liked. Matt hoped that the evening would help bring back the cheerful Tanya he missed. Before they headed out, Matt looked for the necklace he had bought weeks earlier. He wanted her to wear it because she hadn't touched it since that night. After searching their room, he was surprised to find it buried under sweaters in a drawer. Why had she hidden it away? He brought it to her, and it seemed like she flinched when she saw the box. "Oh, sure, I was planning to wear the necklace your grandma gave me for my birthday. I thought it would match the dress better," she said. "That's fine, Tanya. I just thought you might want to show it off tonight," he replied with a smile. "You've worked hard to earn some extra treats." Matt tried to lighten the mood with a joke, but he could sense a barrier around the necklace. She held the necklace and looked at it like it was something strange. "Sure, Ketch, I'll wear it. Can you help me put it on?" He adjusted it for her and then kissed the back of her neck before stepping around to stand in front of her. "Wow, Tan. It feels great to go out, especially since I get to sit with the most beautiful woman in Bournemouth." She playfully punched his shoulder and kissed his cheek before they left for the taxi. The restaurant was just as nice as they hoped. It had a romantic feel, and they sat in a quiet corner with candles. They ordered drinks and food, and soon began their appetizers. Matt noticed something a bit odd. Tanya kept tilting the silver part of the necklace toward her and staring at it for a few moments. She did it in the taxi, and again since they sat down. He figured it was a nervous habit due to the tough case she was working on. After they finished their appetizers, Matt wanted to talk in hopes of easing the tension between them. "Tan, I need to tell you something." She dropped the necklace and looked at Matt, her face pale. "Oh no, I'm sorry, Tan. It's not what you think. It's not about anyone else, I promise. It's about your case." That didn't calm Tanya at all. Instead, her heart raced with worry. "Look, we both know this case has been hard for you. I'm trying to figure out how to support you. I feel so helpless. I offered to be there for you when I gave you that necklace, but you said no, remember? I said to let me know when you needed me, and that was a month ago." She opened her mouth to respond, but he spoke up quickly. "Please let me finish. I'm not upset with you, Tan. It's just a fact, and usually we're very close when we have the chance." He reached across the table and held her hands. "A couple of weeks ago, you brought some files home to look over. Do you remember falling asleep on the sofa and I took you to bed? I thought about putting the files away, but I decided to look at them instead. I thought it might help me understand what was bothering you." Tanya pulled her hands back. "Why did you do that, Matt? You shouldn't have." "Because I'm scared, Tan. Our relationship is struggling and I fear it could get worse. You don't want to talk to me, and without knowing what to do, I feel really lost trying to fix things. If I don't know the problem, how can I help?" "So I looked through a file," Matt said. "Whose file did you read, Matt?" Tanya asked, her eyes narrowing with concern. Her own assault was documented in one of the files, and that thought haunted her. "A woman named Sarah Peterson? She was even married?" Matt replied, his voice strained. "How much of the report did you read?" she demanded. "Only the transcript of her interview and some photos?" Matt took a deep breath. "Tan, I know what happened to you." Tanya felt her chest tighten, her breathing grew rapid, and her hands turned white as she gripped the edge of the table. Panic washed over her. "Tan, please calm down," Matt said softly. "I understand that you've been reading these terrible stories, seeing those pictures and videos day after day. I can only imagine how overwhelming it must be. But you have to remember, these things happen to other people, not to you. You're carrying their pain as if it's your own, but it's not. It's not yours." Tanya felt a wave of calm she didn't expect. "I'm sorry, Katch, you're right. It's hard not to get caught up in all of it." Matt nodded gently. "Can I ask something, Tan?" She agreed with a nod. Sarah's statement said she was approached by a woman in a supermarket who gave her a card. Sarah thought it was strange that a modeling agency would be interested in someone with 2 kids. Tanya sighed. "That woman who gave her the card, she's married to the main perpetrator. She was part of it all." Matt looked troubled. "Okay, so Sarah goes for a photo shoot and admits she was drawn to the photographer. She says he had this way about him, something she couldn't explain. Later, she says she doesn't understand why she did what she did, but she admits she liked the attention and initiated things. They used the photos and videos to blackmail her. What was she thinking, Tan? Can you imagine how her husband felt when all of this came out? Tanya's face hardened, her voice quiet but sharp. How her husband felt? Was he the one being forced into horrific situations? Did he have to endure what those women went through? Did he have to go back to his family and pretend everything was okay while living with that trauma? You have no idea what it's like, Matt. Matt, taken aback, tried to remain calm. Tan, I didn't mean it that way. I'm just trying to understand what happened from all sides. Imagine for a moment that what you described happened to you, not the part in the file that seemed to start consensually, but the rest of it, the darker part, Matt began, his voice heavy with emotion. Let's say, as your husband, I became aware of it. He glanced down at the cutlery on the table, his hands fidgeting nervously. First there's the shame. Shame for both of us. Shame for what was done to you. And shame on me for not being able to protect you from it. I'd feel like I failed you. He paused, taking a deep breath. Then how could we ever be close again? How could we ever be intimate? Wouldn't every act just bring back those horrible memories? I'd be terrified that you'd see me the same way you see those who hurt you. How could I ask for comfort when it might remind you of all the pain? It makes me sick to think about it, and I don't know if I could ever recover from that. Matt looked up and his heart sank. Tanya was sitting completely still, her face pale and her body trembling. She looked like she'd been struck by the weight of his words, frozen in shock. A single tear slid down her cheek, the only sign of life in her otherwise motionless figure. Tan, please, he pleaded softly. It hasn't happened to us. It's not something we have to deal with. The things you've been reading about at work, they aren't your experiences, they belong to others. You need to find a way to let go of this burden. Maybe we could even seek help together, if that would make it easier. In a barely audible voice, Tanya whispered, Okay, I'll look into it. Matt walked over to her and gently wrapped his arms around her, pressing a soft kiss to her cheek. I won't push you, Tan. I'll be here whenever you're ready. We've been through too much to give up now. He paused, trying to lift the weight of the moment with a bit of humor. In the meantime, I'd like to take a lover if you don't mind. Before Tanya could respond, he raised his hand and mimicked a silly gesture, making them both laugh softly. For the moment, the tension eased, but deep down, Tanya still felt the heaviness of it all. If the truth ever came out, she feared her marriage might not survive. At the 8-week mark, the court case finally began. Angela Webb, after cooperating and handing over all the evidence, pleaded guilty, along with the others. Angela received an 8-year sentence, while Ben Webb, the ringleader, was sentenced to 25 years, with a minimum of 20 to serve. Of the 5 individuals involved in the trafficking ring, one man, Barbu Stănescu, remained at large, listed as a person of interest with Interpol. Tanya knew justice had been served, but the scars left behind were harder to heal. Tanya stood in the courtroom, looking at the defendants with a smile as the sentences were read aloud. She felt proud of what she had accomplished, even though it came at a great personal cost. A week before the trial, Sammy Mills, a woman who had tried to escape to Australia, was found. Her body was discovered on a roadside in Mumbai. The examination revealed she had suffered serious injuries over time, which led to her tragic end. Although it couldn't be proven, it was believed that a large payment was made to hurt Sammy as a final act before she left the world that felt so confining for her. It seemed that running away to the other side of the globe hadn't kept her safe. After the trial, the chief constable and his team held a press conference. They praised the hard work of their officers in shutting down a terrible abuse ring. Tanya sat with Graham among the reporters. At the end of the briefing, 2 men approached the chief constable, catching their attention. The men seemed out of place, and the chief constable looked annoyed at first, but then his expression changed after he read something the men handed him. Tanya studied the 2 men. One appeared to be in his late 40s or early 50s, tall, very well dressed, with a mix of gray and black hair. He looked distinguished, possibly a retired military officer. The other man was much younger, likely in his early 30s. He looked more like someone who might be involved in drugs, with messy yet trendy hair, tattoos on his arms and neck, and a piercing in his eyebrow. He had an intense presence that made him seem unpredictable. It didn't fit together for Tanya. After a few minutes of conversation, the chief constable glanced at Tanya and Graham, and the two men followed his gaze. "Which one of us do you think they're looking at, Graham?" Tanya asked. "I really don't know, Tan," he replied. The two men shook hands with the chief constable again and took a different exit, walking right past Tanya and Graham. As they walked by, the older man looked at Tanya, nodded slightly, and smiled. The younger man was bolder. He stopped, winked at Tanya, smiled, and then continued walking with his companion. "Looks like we got our answer, Tan. Are they friends of yours?" Graham asked. "No, not at all, and I really wouldn't want to know them. That last one gave me the creeps," Tanya said. "If you wanted someone who fits the picture of a real psycho, he's the one." They both laughed, but Graham felt uneasy. He had a sense of who they might be or what they stood for. He planned to ask some careful questions in the next few days. Tanya had taken a few days off since it was Matt's break before he started night shifts. Things had calmed down since their talk at the restaurant, but they had still kept their distance emotionally, only sharing a few kisses and cuddles. With the case now behind them, Tanya felt a wave of relief wash over her. She hoped to push away her worries and get their relationship back on track. The next day was very warm. They hadn't decided what to do yet. "I owe you for the past couple of months. Why don't we ride to Brighton on the R1? "Really? You hate sitting on that back seat." "Yes, but I'll take it as my punishment. How about we switch it for something more comfortable? I enjoy riding, but that seat isn't the best." "Please?" she playfully begged, acting like a schoolgirl. "But I've had that bike for a long time." "Ooh, it's a she. Be careful, Matt. It could end up being her or me." Matt laughed. This was the old Tanya starting to come back. "How about this, Tan? Let's pack some small bags and find a B&B for the night." She pressed her lips together, thinking hard, swaying her head playfully. "Deal, but traveling with another woman is going to cost you a dinner, and I promise it will be a fancy one." They packed enough clothes for their night away. When Tanya opened her drawer with her things, she hesitated, knowing she needed to make choices quickly. She found a simple black dress that was quite small. It was a low-cost item from a store, but it would do. She also grabbed some black stockings and short heels, fitting everything into her bag along with other clothes. While Matt went to get the R1 from the underground parking, Tanya searched online and found a nice B&B nearby with parking available. Within an hour, they were on their way. The R1 made quick work of the traffic, and by 1 p.m. they were walking together along the beach and onto Brighton Pier. It was a beautiful day. Since it wasn't school holidays, the area was fairly quiet, and they enjoyed a lovely lunch on the pier. As they walked back toward the hotel, Tanya noticed a sign for a naturist beach. "What a shame we don't have towels. That could have been fun, don't you think?" She giggled as she pointed out the sign. They were used to being on a beach without clothes, having done so in Crete during their honeymoon. Matt had a great idea. One of his co-workers had a girlfriend nearby, and they frequently visited a naturist beach. He remembered hearing about a naturist spa they used when the weather was bad. After a quick look on his phone, he found it. It was along a side street on their way back to the hotel. He took Tanya's hand and led her away from the beach. "Where are we going?" Tanya asked curiously. "We, dear wife, are going to relax." "But the beach is that way." She pointed back across the road. "We don't need the beach, Tan." In just 5 minutes, they arrived at a large Victorian house with a shiny brass plaque that read, Brighton Garden Spas. Inside, they found a woman wearing a neat white uniform, like one a masseuse would wear. "Hello, welcome to Brighton Garden Spas. Have you been here before?" She greeted them cheerfully. "Take a look at the rules on that laminated sheet over there. If you agree to follow them, we can get you started," she added. Matt and Tanya read the rules. Basically, they said to be polite to others, and the last one made them laugh. No inappropriate behavior. They went back to the woman, paid the entrance fee, and received some towels as she explained the layout. After that, they went to the lockers, changed, and wrapped the towels around themselves before setting off to explore. The place was much bigger than it appeared. The front was a large house, but it extended into a large building at the back, which seemed like it used to be a storage area. They made their way to the top floor and discovered an open-air sun terrace where an elderly couple was peacefully napping in the sun. They laid their towels on a couple of sunbeds and relaxed. Tanya felt comfortable under the warm sun, especially since the only people around were the elderly couple. After about an hour, they headed down to the basement and were happily surprised to find 5 spa pools of different sizes. A couple of older men chatted in one pool about the upcoming football season. At the far end, there was a small pool perfect for 2 people, but it was deep in the middle. Matt could hardly touch the bottom and keep his mouth out of the water. They sat on the edge across from each other, with the water at chest level, while bubbles from the jets created a lively atmosphere. Tanya reached out and they held hands. "Thank you, Catch. This is a nice change of pace." After everything they've been through, Tanya leaned back in the warm water and sighed. "It's nice to just relax like this," she said softly, referring to their peaceful moment. Matt nodded in agreement, enjoying the calm atmosphere of the pool. Tanya's hand gently reached over to Matt, her earlier hesitation fading away. The warmth of the water made everything feel more comfortable and natural. "It's nice to be close to you, Catch," she said, giving him a soft smile. As they shared a tender kiss, they were so lost in the moment that they didn't notice an attendant quietly approaching. The sound of water bubbling had masked her arrival. The attendant coughed lightly, drawing their attention. "You're new here, aren't you?" she asked gently. Both Matt and Tanya nodded, a bit embarrassed. The attendant looked around briefly to make sure no one else was nearby. "There's no problem with the kissing," she said with a kind smile. "I can see you're in love, but just be mindful if others show up, okay?" They both nodded again, and the attendant began to walk away. Before she left, she turned and added with a wink, "You might want to check out the steam room upstairs, it's more private." Tanya blushed, her cheeks turning red at the subtle hint. Matt, trying to ease the situation, ducked under the water playfully before resurfacing to kiss Tanya again. She giggled, quickly standing up. "I think she's right," Tanya said with a playful grin. "Let's go to the steam room." They headed upstairs to the steam room, grateful for the privacy. The room filled with thick steam, making it hard to see clearly, which seemed to ease Tanya's nervousness. They shared a quiet, intimate moment, letting the warmth of the room surround them. Eventually, Matt tensed up, letting out a soft groan as he reached the peak of his emotions, and Tanya giggled, teasing, "Oops," as she handed him a towel to clean up. For Tanya, this moment was a big step. The steam clouding their vision made everything feel less intimidating, helping her relax in a way she hadn't expected. After a while, though, Matt felt overheated and suggested they cool off with a last dip in the pool. As they made their way back, the attendant from earlier passed by, giving Tanya a knowing wink and a smile. Tanya giggled again, noticing how Matt's towel didn't quite hide everything. Despite the little embarrassment, they both felt lighter, having shared a special moment of connection in the quiet warmth of the steam room. After another relaxing hour in the pools, Matt and Tanya left and made their way back to the hotel. "Thanks for today, Catch. I really enjoyed that, and I'd love to come back sometime," Tanya said with a smile. "Me too," Matt replied with a grin. Tanya rolled her eyes playfully as she gave him a light punch on the arm. Back at the hotel, they changed for the evening and wandered around town, stopping at a few pubs before finding a cozy Thai restaurant. The delicious smells pulled them in, and they enjoyed a great meal. Afterward, they made their way back, stopping at a couple more places before finally returning to their room, feeling relaxed and slightly tipsy. "Why don't you go ahead and get into bed, lover boy?" Tanya teased. "I'm going to brush my teeth." Matt headed to the bathroom first, brushing his teeth quickly before stepping out. He noticed Tanya had taken her makeup bag and some clothes with her, and he could hear her moving around in the bathroom for a few minutes. After a bit, the bathroom door opened slightly. Her voice came softly from inside. "Matt, tonight I just need to go at my own pace. Don't ask me any questions, okay? Can you turn off the lights? I'll leave the bathroom door open a little for some light." "Of course, Tan, whatever you need. This is all about you. I'll go as fast or slow as you want." Matt turned off the lights and lay on the bed. The dim light from the bathroom cast a soft glow as Tanya stepped out. She stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the light, wearing black stockings and a dress that left little to the imagination. She looked stunning, though Matt could sense a little hesitation in her face. Tanya slowly approached the bed, kneeling halfway down beside him. Matt gently touched her arm, offering reassurance. "Take your time, Tan. Go at your own pace," he said softly. She nodded and moved closer, sitting beside him, her expression still a little uncertain. Matt remained quiet, letting her guide the moment. They lay together, finding comfort in the closeness they shared, allowing the evening to flow naturally without pressure or expectations. It was a quiet, meaningful connection that allowed them both to relax. No rush, just a moment of peace after a long day. Her fingers trembled as she pressed them to her side, her body tense and shaking slightly. Tanya remained quiet, her head dropping onto Matt's chest as her emotions overwhelmed her. She began to sob softly, her hands gripping his shoulders as her body trembled. Matt didn't say a word. He just wrapped his arms around her, gently kissing the top of her head and holding her close as she let out whatever emotions she was struggling with. It took several minutes for her breathing to return to normal. Without speaking, she slowly sat up, adjusting her position beside him. Her movements were more deliberate now, and she looked at him with a mix of feelings in her eyes. Matt remained still, giving her the space to process everything. Tanya lay back down next to him, resting her head on his chest and draping an arm and a leg over him. She took a deep breath and said, "Thank you, Ketch. I love you. I love you with all my heart." Matt stroked her hair gently, and within minutes, she had fallen asleep. Matt wasn't far behind, both of them finding peace in the quiet of the moment. The next morning, there was a slight tension in the air, a sense of something unspoken. Matt tried to lighten the mood by asking, "Did you enjoy the Adele concert?" Tanya looked confused. "What do you mean?" "Go check the mirror," he said with a grin. Tanya walked into the bathroom and let out a playful shriek when she saw her smudged makeup. The reference clicked. Her makeup looked like it had after a tear-filled Adele concert. She closed the door, laughing softly to herself as she cleaned up. 15 minutes later, she came out looking refreshed and noticed Matt, who gave her a playful smile. She climbed back into bed and lay next to him, her hand gently running along his arm. They spent the morning in quiet, loving conversation, reconnecting and sharing a deeper bond. As they ate breakfast together, Tanya felt a sense of hope. While some difficult memories still lingered in the back of her mind, each moment of closeness with Matt seemed to ease her burden, helping her feel lighter and more at peace. She really hoped for a day when the memories would leave her mind. Life started to return to normal, and their relationship improved a lot over the next few weeks. For some reason, Tanya hesitated to be intimate with Matt until they had a similar experience to what happened at the hotel. There were moments of silence and tears. Their relationship wasn't perfect, but it was getting better. After a few more weeks, the news came that Tanya had gotten one of the team lead investigator roles for the upcoming merger and new division. No one was surprised she got it. She sat in the office with Graham, who said she was always the favorite for the job. While going through the papers on her desk, she found an envelope with her name on it. Inside was a simple card showing a sunrise over the ocean. The card was handwritten in beautiful letters. "Congratulations, Tanya, on your promotion. It's just a step towards something greater." It was signed by Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones. "Graham, do you know who these people are or how this card got here? I just found out about the job a few minutes ago." Graham looked around the office, then stood up and nodded for Tanya to follow him. They walked down the corridor until they reached a fire door. "Tanya, do you trust me? I mean, really trust me? Would you trust me with your life?" She was surprised by his question, but the serious look on his face made her realize he was serious. "Do you remember the strange couple of men at the press conference? I think they will be Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones." "Do you know them, Graham?" "Yes, I do. Well, not as people, but I understand what they represent. As your friend, Tanya, when they show up, keep your distance. Nothing good will come from dealing with them." She had never heard Graham talk like this. He usually went straight to the point, and there was no room for confusion, but right now he seemed unclear. "Graham? Who are they?" "They are like shadows, part of a secret government group we don't know much about. In my career, I've encountered them rarely, but trust me, they bring trouble. They may ask you to take risks that could put you in danger without a second thought. If you take away one piece of advice from me, let it be this: walk away when they come around." Just then, they heard footsteps coming towards them. Graham put a finger to his lips and they went back to the office. Graham's comments had unsettled her, but what could they really mean for her? Matt's work hours didn't match with hers, so they had to wait to celebrate her promotion with a meal. He was really happy when she shared the news, making it clear how proud he was. The next morning, her phone rang at 7 a.m. The caller ID showed it was Graham, which was unusual for him to call so early. "Have you seen the news, Tanya?" he asked without a greeting. "No, I'm turning the TV on now," she replied. The morning news showed a picture of 4 people who had been sent to prison because of Tanya's work. The headline across the bottom of the screen caught her attention. "What happened, Graham? It says they all died in strange ways, and they are in different prisons around the country." They stayed on the phone as they watched. The news shared that Angela Webb had hurt herself in her cell, Barbu Stănescu had a bad reaction to eating nuts, John Backer was involved in a sudden prison fight, and Ben Webb was found in his cell in a terrible state because of what had happened to him. It mentioned that all 4 were kept in isolation, and the videos from the prison showed no one had entered their cells, or the recordings were not working. "Tanya, about what we talked about yesterday. This proves my point. Be careful," he said before ending the call. Tanya's thoughts raced at the suggestion, could the government really be behind such an act? The next few months seemed to go by quickly. Matt and Tanya's relationship continued to improve, and while some issues still lingered, they stayed more in the background. Slowly, Tanya started to change her clothing style from the plain outfits she had been wearing to the more stylish clothes she used to enjoy. She began to feel hopeful that her life with Matt was getting back on track. The only area where she struggled was with her underwear choices. She still had memories that troubled her, causing her to wonder whose desire it really was, hers or someone else's influence. Finally, the new Southern Police Serious Crimes Investigation Unit was up and running. It had introduced new policies to better match modern policing needs. The Black Glass Building stood among other similar buildings in a modern business park near Southampton and Portsmouth. The rules made it clear that no signs of police activity were allowed. There couldn't be any uniforms or marked vehicles, and nothing should hint at police being present. Everyone had to sign a new confidentiality agreement as part of their contracts. This document was part of the Official Secret Act, stating that they might access sensitive materials requiring special permission, which would be managed individually. It was serious business. In the morning, all 40 staff members gathered together. They had a new leader, Thomas Wilson, a man in his mid-40s. Unlike many in the force, he had not risen through the ranks, but a release from HR said he had worked for the government for the last 20 years, keeping the country safe and stable. Thomas addressed his team, welcoming them and expressing confidence that they were the right people for the job. He seemed serious, well-educated, and his gaze swept across the room as he spoke. Tanya thought he paused to look at her for a moment, but she realized it was likely a technique he used to engage the audience. At noon, everyone left for a large room booked at a nearby social club. This event was meant for the staff to mingle and get to know each other. Social events often helped build important working relationships faster than weeks in an office. Graham, who had become the operations director, felt some guilt about what had happened with Tanya and her relationship with Matt. To help mend things, he invited Matt to the gathering. This way, Matt could see how valued Tanya was in the organization now. Matt talked to some of Tanya's old colleagues and met new ones. Unless asked, he kept his identity to himself. He chatted with Tanya a few times, but she often got pulled away to speak with others. This didn't bother him. He knew he wasn't part of this group. While he was discussing favorite motorcycle routes with a guy who rode a Honda Fireblade, he noticed 2 men enter who seemed out of place. Someone approached to speak to them, but the older man pointed at Thomas Wilson. Thomas nodded at them, and they made their way over. Matt glanced to see where Graham or Tanya were, and noticed Graham staring at the 2 men as they approached Thomas. Graham noticed their arrival right away. His first thought was confusion over why they were there. He started walking toward Thomas to interrupt them when Thomas raised his hand slowly, signaling him to stop. He didn't need to be there. Instead, he returned to the table where he had been chatting earlier, planning to observe the unfolding conversation. He hoped to pick up on clues from their faces and body language. When the three of them shook hands, Graham could tell that Thomas Wilson knew the two unexpected guests well, suggesting a long history among them. This made Graham feel uneasy. By then, Matt had approached Graham. "Who's the strange pair, Graham? They seem so different. It's like a spy and a tough guy just walked in. Who are they?" "You might be on to something, Matt. They say their names are Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones." A few minutes later, Thomas Wilson looked around the room. He pointed to Tanya, and Mr. Jones walked over, tapped her shoulder, and spoke to her briefly before signaling back to Thomas. She went to join Thomas and Mr. Smith, with Mr. Jones following closely. There were some handshakes and introductions. Then, Mr. Smith led Tanya to a quiet corner table for a private chat, while Thomas moved off to talk with some of his team. Matt turned to Graham, noticing the disapproval on his face. "I think I'm going to go meet our new guests." "Good idea, Matt. Just keep your guard up. They might be tricky." Matt walked toward them confidently, wanting to make his intention clear. Tanya was facing away from him, and Mr. Smith noticed Matt's approach. He nodded slightly, which Mr. Jones caught. Mr. Jones then stood up and walked over to Matt. They faced each other about 10 feet from the table. Matt noticed that Mr. Smith didn't look their way and continued talking with Tanya. Mr. Jones smiled and reached out his hand toward Matt. Matt shook his hand but was suddenly pulled closer, which caused sharp pain in his hand as Mr. Jones gripped it tightly. Meanwhile, Mr. Jones threw his other arm around Matt's shoulder like an old friend. "Matt, great to see you, buddy," he said loudly with an Australian accent, making sure nearby people could hear. Then he leaned in closer to Matt's ear. "This is a private chat. Why don't you head back to the bar and grab a drink? She'll join you soon." It was more of a command than a suggestion. "Who are you and why are you here?" "As Tanya's boss, I should be asking you that. I didn't see your name on the guest list, friend." "As for why we're here, we like to have regular one-on-one chats with our employees," Mr. Jones said casually. "But Tanya works for Graham, not for you," Matt replied, confused and frustrated. "Mister," Jones laughed and shook his head, bending Matt's fingers slightly before letting them go. "Go get a drink. It's a free bar. Your wife will join you soon enough." Matt watched as Jones returned to the table with Tanya and Mr. Smith, all while keeping an eye on him. Feeling a surge of anger, Matt scanned the room for Graham and saw him deep in conversation with Thomas Wilson. Matt decided to wait for a chance to talk with Graham, but as he stood there, his fingers still throbbing, he wondered how Mr. Jones had overpowered him so easily. And how did they know who he was? Were they really Tanya's bosses? Graham had never mentioned them before. As these questions swirled in his mind, Matt became aware of a conversation happening nearby. Two men were huddled over a smartphone, speaking in hushed tones. Something they said caught his attention. "Where is she, mate?" one asked. "There, sitting with those two guys in the corner," the other replied. "She seems so professional, but looking at this, you'd think she's hiding a wild side," they chuckled. Matt felt a sudden surge of unease. He turned toward the men and eased into their conversation. "Hey, how's it going, guys?" he asked casually. One of the men, noticing Matt, responded, "Good, mate. Haven't seen you around before." "Yeah, I've been in London for the past 6 months, just started a new role," Matt lied, trying to blend in. He had caught a glimpse of a photo on the phone and wanted to see more. The men introduced themselves as Jake and Dan, welcoming Matt with handshakes. They exchanged some small talk, but Matt quickly steered the conversation. "I couldn't help but notice earlier, that picture on your phone, it looked like someone I know." They laughed quietly, and Jake unlocked his phone, opening an album before handing it to Matt. "Be discreet while you scroll through, mate." Matt took the phone and started looking through the pictures. The faces were blurred, but as he zoomed in, he recognized something familiar. The earrings, custom-made with the letters T and M, belonged to Tanya. At first, the photos seemed ordinary, but as he scrolled, they grew more suggestive. Then one picture stopped him in his tracks. The woman, unmistakably Tanya, was posed in heels and stockings, looking back over her shoulder. The image was clear, and the expression on her face sent a chill through Matt. He froze, unsure of what to do next, his mind racing with questions he wasn't ready to answer. Matt recognized the face. He had seen it several times before when an offer had been made to him. Dan leaned closer to Matt. "Yeah, Everyone stops when they first see that one. I'll tell you, it really caught my attention. He stepped back, allowing Matt to look through the remaining pictures. Inside, Matt felt his anger building, like a volcano ready to erupt. He knew he had to control it, to keep it hidden for now. There would be a time to show his feelings. As Matt quickly scrolled through more photos, his heart sank. It wasn't his wife looking back at him, but a cheap model instead. He paused at the last picture, feeling a wave of nausea rise within him. He needed to see more, just a little longer. "You okay, mate? You look like you've seen a ghost." He returned the phone to Jake. "Wow, how low can she go?" Dan and Jake exchanged looks and burst into laughter, clearly joking about Matt's comment. Jake fiddled with his phone and handed it back to Matt. "Oh, she can go much lower. Just please be discreet." Matt pressed play on a video clip. There was no sound, but it didn't need any. The video showed Tanya dressed in some revealing clothes, standing in front of a man whose face wasn't visible. She was leaning against him, and as she knelt down, she started to undo his belt. At that moment, someone approached Matt at the bar, and he quickly handed the phone back to Jake. He already had a sense of where the video was headed, but now he wanted proof. "Wow, who would have thought she'd go this far?" Jake joked. "Shut that off," Matt said, noticing how close the newcomer was at the bar. "Is there more to see?" They both chuckled. "Oh yeah, too bad that show where they pay for video clips isn't on TV anymore. It was hilarious." They laughed again, shaking their heads. Jake leaned in closer to Matt. "Is your Bluetooth on?" Matt pulled out his phone and turned it on. "Got it," Jake said as Matt's phone chimed with a Bluetooth file being received. "Follow the link to the server file. The password is Sausage Munching Monster," Jake whispered. "That's a strange password," Matt said. The guys laughed, and it almost made them cry. Dan patted Matt on the back. "Trust me, once you look at everything, you'll see why it's fitting." Matt finished his drink. "Do you know where this came from?" The guys were quiet for a moment. "Yeah, but keep it to yourself. Don't share what we've given you. You know what could happen if this gets out. It was put together by Gerard." Matt quickly scanned the room but couldn't see the person he was looking for. His attention fell on his wife, who was deep in conversation, likely flirting, he thought. He spotted Sandra and asked her where Gerard was. He learned that Gerard was outside, smoking near the parking lot. This was his chance. He stepped outside, walking briskly, his fists clenched, feeling a storm of anger inside. Without slowing down, Matt approached Gerard, who managed a quick greeting before Matt delivered a swift punch to his face. Gerard fell to the ground, and Matt heard voices behind him. Someone tried to reach for him, but he ignored them, getting into his car. He spun around in the parking lot, kicking up gravel before speeding off toward the motorway. After a few moments, his phone rang. It was Tanya, but he declined to answer. She called again and again until she finally stopped. By this time, Matt reached the motorway, and his frustration showed in his driving. He revved the engine, swerving dangerously between lanes, while horns blared from other drivers. The phone buzzed again, this time from Graham. He picked up. "How could you? You knew my wife was being unfaithful, and you covered for her." Matt was furious. "Graham, I don't know what you think you know, but I think you've misunderstood." Matt interrupted him. "Misunderstood? I just saw my wife acting in a way I never expected. I watched her behave inappropriately. What is there to misunderstand?" He weaved between two big trucks, causing one to brake suddenly, leading to angry honks from all sides. Graham could hear the loud engine of the car nearby. "Matt, pull over. I'll send someone to get you. Don't take risks. It's your life and others you might be endangering," he said. "Forget you." Matt hung up, pulled his phone from his pocket, and switched it off. When he got back to the apartment building, he parked in the open area and hurried upstairs. He grabbed a couple of bags and stuffed as many clothes and toiletries as he could inside before heading back to his car. He picked up his motorcycle keys, loaded the bags in, and ran to the underground garage. He unlocked his motorcycle, hopped on, and rode out without a helmet. He parked it between two cars, hoping it would stay hidden for the next half hour. He jogged back, took the elevator to his apartment, and placed his helmet and jacket on the dining room table. He was ready to leave quickly. He turned on the TV, switched on his phone, and connected it to the TV to continue watching the video he had started. But as soon as he saw some upsetting scenes, he rushed to the bathroom and got sick. tears filled his eyes. His heart felt completely shattered. He restarted the video, but paused it almost immediately, switching to some mindless afternoon TV that played in the background. He snorted at a rerun of a talk show where people were justifying their actions to their partners. His mind was racing with thoughts. A few minutes later, he heard a key in the door, and a worried Tanya rushed into the apartment. "What happened, Matt? Why did you run off? They had to get an ambulance for Jared." "With any luck, they're taking him somewhere he won't come back from. But what I want to know is, what have you done?" Tanya hesitated for a moment, surprised and upset. "Graham, just leave me alone. Tanya, take that earpiece out unless I'm the case you're working on. Is that it? Am I just someone you've been using for your job?" Quickly, Tanya yanked the small device from her ear. "No, Matt, please let me explain. It's not what you think." She stood there shaking, her eyes wide, tears running down her cheeks. As she started to understand the situation better, Matt wondered how far the lies had gone. Through her tear-filled eyes, Tanya looked at Matt. He stood swaying from the earlier effort and shock of the revelations that had overwhelmed him. She reached out her arms and moved toward him, but he clenched his fists and took a stance like an angry animal ready to pounce. "Please, Matt, no!" She kept her arms out and started to cry. He didn't say anything, only the sound of his quick breathing filled the air. Tanya could see his anger. His body language was clear, and she didn't dare to approach him. "Matt, what did they show you? I can explain, I didn't mean to." Before she could finish, Matt shouted, his rage making him spit as he spoke. "Why were you so eager to succeed that you did that? Or did you think I wasn't enough for you? No, I'm not telling you what I saw. You tell me. How bad is it? How far did you go?" Tanya struggled to breathe on the edge of panic. She was fighting to hold it together, trying to save a marriage that seemed to be crumbling before her eyes. "Matt, please, I can. Explain. It was just some poses, some clothes. It was..." The screen changed from the TV show to a video clip. It showed Tanya in very high boots and minimal clothing. She was performing for the camera, and as she sank to her knees, Matt's eyes widened in disbelief. "Turn it off! I'm begging you, Matt! Please stop! Turn it off!" Her hands covered her face in shock, her wide eyes peeking through her fingers as she became frantic. Matt stood frozen, watching the screen as he continued to torture himself by replaying it. Just as she looked into the camera, the screen went black when Tanya hurled a dining chair at it, shattering the image. Feeling dizzy, she dropped to her knees just as Matt turned, grabbing his helmet and jacket before storming out of the apartment. He saw Graham waiting by the elevator. "Matt, wait! You need to let us explain!" Ignoring him, Matt jogged to the stairs, taking them two at a time as he hurried down. All he could hear was someone calling after him, a voice he tried to push out of his mind. "Matt, please stop! Come back! I'm begging you, don't go! I love you!" He reached the ground floor and walked out of the building, putting on his helmet and jacket as he headed for his motorcycle. He noticed a car partially blocking the underground parking, thinking Tanya might have brought backup. He got on his motorcycle, put in the key, kicked the stand up, and pressed the starter button, causing the engine to roar to life. Across the parking garage, a car began to pull out. As Matt moved toward the exit onto the main road, the car sped up, trying to block his path. In response, Matt pushed down on the throttle and rushed towards the road. The driver of the car thought Matt would slow down to look before merging, but in his frustration, Matt kept speeding ahead, forcing another car to hit the brakes. As he shifted gears, the back wheel spun and the front wheel lifted off the ground for a moment. He zipped through the roundabout before the police car could even enter the main road. If he had glanced back, he would have seen Tanya running from the building, shouting for him, then stumbling as he sped away. In his mind, the pieces of his life that his grandfather once spoke of were being ripped apart, and the upcoming pieces were a disaster. Tanya felt trapped. As she fell, her last thought was that her marriage was likely over. Matt didn't go far. Less than a mile later, he pulled into the parking lot of a nearby hotel and parked his motorcycle out of sight. He checked in for 3 days, dropped off his helmet and jacket, then headed back to his apartment building. He noticed the unmarked police car, but assumed the officers were inside. Keeping his head down, he quickly reached his car, always looking around to avoid any surprises. He soon blended into traffic on the main road and drove to the train station. After parking, he walked into the station with his bags, bought a coffee at the cafe, and sat down at a table. The next train to London would leave in 20 minutes. He took his phone from his pocket and powered it on. When he fled his apartment, he had the sense to turn it off. Even in silent mode, it vibrated with messages and voicemails. He decided to ignore them for now. There was something more important to focus on. He pulled up the link that had triggered the events of the last few hours, trying to access it. He needed to download the content to see how serious her betrayal was and if it could help him in a divorce. As he watched the loading bar on his phone, the website displayed a message saying the link was not found. Frustrated, he cursed himself for not downloading it earlier. He knew it wouldn't last once the truth came out, but it was too late to dwell on that. They both watched part of it on a big 55-inch TV. She couldn't hide what she had done. He sat there, staring blankly at his phone when it buzzed. It was a familiar number. Taking a deep breath, he answered, trying to hold back his tears. He didn't say anything at first until a soft voice spoke. It was his grandma. "Matt, I got a call from Tanya. She's upset, but I understand a little of what happened. You think she did something wrong, and before she could explain, you left. If you can't come home, you can come here. You know I'm always here for you." His eyes filled with tears, and his voice shook with feelings swirling inside him. "Not yet. I need some time to think about what I saw today. I need to sort it all out. I feel broken, Gran." "Shh, dear, we can handle this together. Please come home." "No, I need to be away for a few days." In the background, he heard an announcement for the train to London. He knew his grandma heard it too. "I'll text you tomorrow. I promise I'll be home soon. I love you, Gran." As he hung up, his grandma sensed the sadness of a young boy who had just lost something precious. What had he seen? She would find out soon. Meanwhile, Tanya, upset, had given her phone to her boss, Graham. They were on their way to her. Matt knew they would try to find him. His car had a tracker, so they would know it was at the train station. The conversation with his grandma would help them realize he was there. They could check the security cameras, which he hoped would trick them into thinking he was headed to London. That might give him a few days to think things through. Tanya knocked and called for Matt's grandma, Georgina. "In the kitchen, dear. Come on in." Tanya and Graham walked into the kitchen to find Georgina sitting at the table with a pot of hot tea and cups ready. "I made a big pot. I thought you'd want some company. Hello, Graham. How's your family? Time flies, doesn't it? Matt and Tanya's wedding seems like it was just yesterday." At that moment, Tanya broke down in tears, resting her head on her arms. Georgina quietly asked Graham to pour the tea while she gently stroked Tanya's hair. When the crying turned to sniffles, Georgina sat back down, her voice kind but serious. "Is now a good time to tell me why my conversation with my grandson felt like telling a young boy he lost his family?" As she spoke, she reached out to hold Tanya's hands, offering a comforting smile. Graham spoke up, feeling that Tanya might find it hard to explain everything. Tanya was working undercover as part of an investigation that didn't go well. When we realized things were wrong, it was too late to fix them. Tanya faced a tough choice afterward and thought it was best to keep it from Matt. Before he could say more, Georgina chimed in. "Did you agree with her choice?" Tanya and Graham exchanged looks, and after a moment he replied, "No, I told her she should talk to Matt. Keeping it hidden could lead to problems later, and today is that day." Everyone took a sip of tea as they thought about this. Georgina continued to ask questions. "What has upset Matt so much?" Graham looked at Tanya, who nodded sadly. He then took out his laptop and logged into a secure police network. "These files are very private. I hope you won't discuss them outside of this room." "Of course, Graham," Georgina assured him. He opened a folder and started showing images from Tanya's first photo shoot. "I have to say, Tanya, you look great in these. But some of the later ones are a bit much. Still, it's not enough to make Matt react like he did. I'm not foolish. There's more to this, isn't there?" A quick glance passed between Graham and Tanya. With a lowered head, Tanya nodded. Graham clicked through almost all the photos in the folder but didn't show the last few. Georgina looked at Tanya. "I can understand why he might be upset, but..." Suddenly, Tanya stood up and went to the living room, her tears flowing again. Before she closed the door, she said softly, "Show her everything, Graham. I have nothing left to hide." Other than the sound of Graham clicking the mouse, they could hear Tanya crying for the next few moments until Georgina watched a video file. She observed the short clip showing a man talking to Tanya in a very vulnerable state. The man slapped her, making her drop to her knees. As Tanya struggled with the zipper of the man's pants, Georgina interrupted. "You can stop it now, Graham. I've seen enough." She was not herself, Georgina. She didn't really understand what was happening. Yes, I could tell something was wrong when he slapped her. I'd expect Tanya to stand up for herself, not just go along with it. How far did she go, Graham? They talked for about 20 minutes. Graham showed the report that proved Tanya had been drugged. He explained that nobody knew what happened because communication was poor, which delayed getting help to Tanya. What happened to that man? Someone was filming too. Do you remember a few months ago? 4 people died in prison on the same day? Right, the abuse case. Poor girl. Why didn't she tell Matt? He cares for her so much, they could have worked it out. But she kept secrets, Graham. This won't end well. Can you make some fresh tea? I'll go next door to chat. Tanya sat on the sofa, staring at a wedding photo on the wall. She felt alone and unsure how to heal from everything. Would Matt have understood if she had told him sooner? Georgina sat beside her, wrapping an arm around Tanya. Tanya leaned in, seeking the comfort she missed deeply. Graham explained what happened. I know you didn't realize it at the time, but it's out now. You tried to hide it. Why didn't you tell him or me back then? We could have worked it out, but now, I really don't know, Tanya. This made Tanya cry harder as Graham returned with 3 cups of tea. As people got off the train to London, Matt joined the crowd, eager to catch a taxi back to the hotel. He sat at the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. His life felt shattered. He kept replaying the brief video in his mind. Why would Tanya do that? The video was short, but her expressions showed emotions he thought were only for him. He was stuck thinking about the future. Divorce, money, explaining everything to friends. But he couldn't shake the video from his mind, her look, the feeling of betrayal. There was something odd about the video that he couldn't put his finger on. He felt frustrated. Why hadn't he saved the files right away? He walked into town and sat in a quiet pub, ordering food and a drink. He barely touched his meal, just drank a few pints before heading back to his room. 3 days later, he was set to start working nights. He left his motorcycle in the parking lot and took a taxi to his grandmother's house. When he arrived, she hugged him tightly. He held her closely, but the events of the last few days had left him feeling numb inside. Take those boxes to your room, then come and have a cup of tea with me, Matt. I want to hear all about it. Matt thought back to the day he learned what had happened, but chose not to share all the details of what felt like betrayal. He simply mentioned he had seen a troubling video with Tanya. It must be awful to see the woman you love with another man. Matt sputtered, nearly spilling his tea. He had never heard his grandmother speak so bluntly before. Matthew Andrews, do you think old people haven't had their share of experiences? I grew up in the swinging 60s. We were the ones who started all of this, so don't be too surprised. But yes, Tanya should not have acted that way with another man. Why didn't you talk to her? Because she didn't tell me anything. I asked her many times what was wrong, but she pushed me away. It was her expression when she looked at the camera in that video. I've seen that look before, and I thought it was only for me. She showed someone else the affection I believed was just for me. What will you do next? Divorce, Gran. There's no other option. I don't think that's truly what you want. You need to talk to her and understand why this happened. The only person who can help you is Tanya. I've seen her and she is just as upset as you are. I don't see how it will help. She betrayed me, lied, and even got Graham involved. Is that what you think, Matthew, that she betrayed you? He could tell she was upset because she only used his full name when she was angry. They were sitting at the dining table when the doorbell rang. His grandma went to answer it and he heard voices. The kitchen door opened and she walked in with Graham. What are you doing here? Matt's voice was sharp. Matthew, I've never allowed swearing in my home and that won't change today. I invited Graham as a guest, so please be respectful. And Graham, if you upset my grandson, I won't hesitate to give you a piece of my mind. Now I'm going to make some fresh tea and watch the news while you two have a talk. A nice friendly chat. After leaving the fresh pot of tea on the table, Georgina went to watch television. While she made the tea, Graham took out his laptop and some files, placing them carefully on the table. He refilled Matt's cup before filling his own. Matt glanced at Graham's cup and scoffed. I didn't think you'd be one of those types, but I guess I didn't really know my wife. What do you mean by one of those types? Graham asked. Your cup, it says something unexpected. Don't do it for yourself then, Graham? It's funny you say that, Matt. It's easy to misunderstand things right in front of you. Graham turned his cup around. It said, "I love Arsenal FC" next to the club's logo. Not what you thought. I've been a Gooner all my life. My brothers, who support Chelsea, thought it would be funny. They both took a sip of tea. After putting their cups down, Graham spoke again. Okay, Matt. I know those two gave you access to materials taken from our department. You've seen the pictures, but what videos did you watch? Why does it matter? I now know my partner isn't what I thought. What difference does it make? Graham turned his cup back to the position where Matt had misread it. I think what you've seen is similar to my cup, Matt. Can I show you what I think you've seen? Matt nodded. Graham clicked a file and turned his laptop toward Matt. He looked at his watch, aware of how long the clip was. When the time was up, he turned the laptop back to himself. This time, Matt noticed what he had missed before, the red cheek and the cut lip. Is that what you saw? Matt nodded. Can I see the unedited version with sound? They looked at each other for a moment before Matt nodded slowly. Graham could see the tension on Matt's face. He clicked on a file, then turned the screen back to Matt. A foreign voice began speaking. Three men sat casually in chairs, one talking while the others laughed occasionally. That's Emre Yilmaz speaking. The man on the left is Jan Bakker, and to the right is Ben Webb. The person holding the camera is Ben's wife, Angela. You've probably heard in the news that they were involved in a criminal case disguised as a series of companies. He's discussing their website aimed at a specific market where they find women who will engage in degrading acts. They are about to show something with a new arrival. The camera person opened a door and called out to a woman named Karen sitting at a makeup desk. Matt instantly recognized Tanya, but there's something off as she seems unsteady. Entering the room as Karen, she was led to the middle where Ben approached her. He welcomed her, but she looked confused, gazing at a necklace around her neck. Ben yanked the necklace away from her while speaking, and at that moment, the situation seemed much like the edited version Matt had seen. But this one continued. Suddenly, the sound of a door burst open with shouts of "Police!" The camera dropped, but continued recording. Moments later, there was a loud scream, and something bloody fell to the floor slightly out of sight. Shortly after, the sound of a hard hit was followed by Tanya collapsing to the ground, unconscious and hurt, just as the camera was picked up and stopped recording. Graham faced Matt, sliding some files toward him. She was under the influence, Matt. She didn't know what was real. She thought it was you who had pushed her down. Here are the official reports: toxicology, raid details, my report, Tanya's report, and all her team's reports from that day and the previous day. Nothing is hidden from you. Take your time. Matt looked through the reports, noticing the important details. He now understood why she disliked the necklace he had given her after the incident. It also showed that her distance from him was not just about the files and interviews. She was as much a victim as the other women involved. He felt a strong urge to yell at Graham. Through clenched teeth, he said, "Why didn't she talk to me? If you are my friend, why didn't you tell me? You both treated me like I didn't matter." "I'm really sorry," Graham replied. "I care for Tanya like a daughter, and it pains me that I let this happen to her. I will never forgive myself. When she was at the hospital, I asked her to be honest with you. She believed that you wouldn't take it well, so she kept quiet." That guy decided to download the files for himself. He shared them with a friend, and then it started going around in a small group. He changed what you first saw to make it look like she was okay with it. Matt interrupted. "But that's just it. Her face showed she was not okay. You can see something was wrong." "That might be true, but I know you saw some of the files Tanya was reviewing. You noticed how a married woman was tricked and drugged, just like Tanya was. It's all right there. And realize this: when Tanya found out it was not you, she was furious. Thank goodness that part was unclear. Matt, things aren't always what they seem. Talk to her. She's really struggling. It wasn't really her. The drugs changed her. We can offer you both support if you need it. Now go talk to her." Graham packed his things, said goodbye to Georgina, and left. Tanya's grandmother came back into the room with a fresh pot of tea and sat down at the table. "Did that help you? Can you see that she may have acted that way, but it wasn't truly her? The drugs altered her. You need to look beyond that. You've dealt with tougher situations than this, Matt." "But I didn't have a choice before, did I? They are gone. I couldn't bring them back. Now I have to think about what's best for me, and honestly, I'm not sure. Be careful, Matt. If you push her away for too long, she might make the choice for you. Stay calm when you decide, but you have to talk to her. At 2 p.m., Tanya heard the door open. Matt, is that you? She jumped up from the couch and hurried to the hallway as Matt entered. She quickened her steps, arms open wide, ready to welcome him, but he stopped her with a raised hand. Please, Matt, don't! Tears filled her eyes. Tan, please calm down. We need to talk. Let's try to do it without letting our emotions take over. Can you do that? She nodded, trying to hold back tears and the ache of not being able to touch him. Matt went to the fridge and got a bottle of water, and Tanya filled a couple of glasses. Okay, Matt, where should we begin? Why did you go there, Tan, knowing they were dangerous? Remember our talks about our lives versus our work? Someone had to take the risk. Someone who could pretend to be a student needing money and could stay smart and safe. Matt interrupted her. You said you'd stay smart and safe, Tan. How could you say that after everything? Were you so focused on what you wanted that you forgot to be cautious? Tanya shot him an angry look and he glared back. Both could feel the tension building. I know you've seen the reports, Matt. Everything went wrong because there were too many mistakes. I never meant for things to happen this way. I was just trying to... Matt cut her off again. Trying to impress people? Make poor choices? Please, Matt, you read the reports. I was out of it. At one point I thought you were there. You know how strong the drugs were. I had no control. Stop, Tan. You've hurt me. I saw the expressions in those photos. I thought they were only for me, but I was wrong. His voice trembled as he tried to hide the sadness in his heart. Matt, I need a coffee. A short break might help. He nodded and stepped out onto the balcony. A few minutes later, Tanya joined him with the coffee. When I went to the hospital, Graham begged me to tell you so you'd come, but I didn't. I wanted to be home before you, so things felt normal. He said I had to tell you the truth, but when you looked into my eyes the next day and I saw your shock, I realized you wouldn't accept the truth, so I lied. I didn't tell the truth because I thought that was the only way to save my marriage from falling apart. I wanted to seem normal, but memories kept coming back to me. Do you remember the necklace? It reminded me of a special one I had. I thought it would keep me safe. Looking at it made me feel uneasy, and I wanted to blame it for everything that went wrong. Tears streamed down her face. I really wanted to connect with you again right away, but it was hard. I hid my feelings behind my work to explain my distance, and I know that was wrong, but you helped me. We found a way to get back to the good times we shared. Yes, I agree. But you didn't tell me everything. I see now why you were so shaken when we talked about how a husband would react when we went out for that meal. She was crying softly now, replaying that conversation in her mind since I had learned the truth. Please, we've fixed things before, and I know you didn't realize how troubled I was, but we can overcome this again. You might be able to, but I'm not sure I can. All I see are those moments, and it's hard to forget. Tanya suddenly hugged Matt tightly, crying hard as if her life depended on it. Don't go. We can fix this. I promise to make new memories with you. I am begging you, please don't leave me. Matt stood still. He cared for his wife, but the memories were hard to shake. He couldn't figure out how they could be close again. He felt lost. After a few minutes, Tanya stepped back. Say something, please. I need time, Tanya. I'm struggling to understand how we move forward, if we can at all. Take all the time you need. I'll be waiting for you, no matter how long it takes. I won't lose hope that you'll come back to me. Matt leaned in and quickly kissed her cheek, pulling away before she could respond. As he walked away, he said softly, Just give me some time. As soon as the apartment door closed, she fell onto the bed, sobbing. She grabbed his t-shirt from under the pillow, the one she had taken from the laundry, and inhaled its faint scent. She prayed silently that he would come back soon, before she lost this last connection to him. Matt returned to work, and when he got up on the fourth night, his grandmother was in the kitchen, a pot of tea ready. Matthew, you need to decide what you will do about your wife. She came over last night, and she is very upset. She can't keep going like this, so make a choice. But what about me? My mind is filled with images I can't seem to shake, and I don't think I ever will, Matt said, his voice heavy. It'll take time, Matt. Time will heal. Each day, little by little, we'll start to cover up the pain. You've both been through so much, and it's important to remember you're both hurting. You need to help Tanya, and in doing that, you'll help yourself, too. With a firm tone, she added, "Go home to your wife or find another place to stay." She picked up her cup of tea and walked into the living room, closing the door behind her. The next morning was Saturday. After finishing his last night shift, Matt returned to their apartment. He quietly let himself in and took off his clothes in the living room, careful not to wake Tanya. Opening the bedroom door gently, he saw her fast asleep. He slipped into bed beside her, cautiously placing his arm over her. In a soft voice, Tanya whispered, "Is that you, Catch?" "Shh," Matt whispered back, holding her close. Tanya began to cry as Matt comforted her, keeping her still. "Just stay like this, Tan. We need to take small steps to heal," he said gently. Matt soon fell asleep, worn out from his shift, while Tanya lay awake, silently promising herself that she would never let him go again. Pushed by Graham, they attended counseling together. This time, Tanya opened up completely. There were tough moments, tears, raised voices, hugs, but slowly they worked through it and found themselves in a better place. Rebuilding their closeness wasn't easy. After everything that had happened, it was harder for Matt this time than for Tanya. One day, Tanya put on black lingerie, hoping to reignite a special memory from their past. But instead of rekindling those feelings, it brought back all the painful images Matt had been trying to bury. The memories of what he had seen in those pictures and videos resurfaced, making it difficult for him to feel the same. It took months for him to get to a point where he could see the lingerie as something special and personal again. One of the biggest challenges was finding comfort in their intimate moments. Tanya tried to make it easier by being gentle and careful, but each time Matt would pull away, unable to move past the memories. It was a struggle. The turning point came one day after Matt finished a long, exhausting night shift. As he slept, Tanya gently moved close, careful not to wake him. She knew it was a delicate moment, and slowly he began to feel a sense of normalcy returning. Over time, things improved, but Matt made her promise not to look into his eyes during these moments. It was a boundary that helped him cope. And so, slowly, they continued to heal, step by step, finding their way back to each other. Everything that had been done to rebuild their closeness began to fall apart. In the year that followed, life returned to a pattern similar to what it was before the incident. However, there were some changes. Jared lost his job after a brief inquiry into his theft of secret police information, which included images and videos of Tanya. 6 other officers also accessed the link that had accidentally been given to Matt. These 6 were moved back to regular police duty and could be seen in their blue uniforms patrolling various shopping areas. One morning, Matt was at the fire station enjoying some cereal while reading the newspaper. The front page displayed a story about how a security team saved a rock star as he left a concert. The star had a habit of inviting attractive married women, often with their partners, to backstage parties after the show. Eventually, he would disappear with the woman, leaving her partner behind, with claims that she would be back in the morning. However, one night, he chose the wrong person. A man came to the next concert after the star had put on a show for him and his wife filled with rage. He brought a knife, intending to confront the singer. The newspaper showed a dramatic photo of the man lunging forward with the knife while security rushed in to protect the star. Matt recognized one of the security personnel. It was Lance, the husband of the woman Matt had once been involved with. Throughout the day, he couldn't stop thinking about that night when Lance discovered him and his wife together in their own home. The guilt of what he had done lingered heavily on his mind, feeling worse than ever. He knew he needed to address it somehow. Later, Matt called the security company mentioned in the article. He arranged to meet Lance, pretending it was about a previous conversation they had. The last time they spoke, things had been heated. Lance had been very angry. On his next day off, Matt rode his motorcycle to Lance's office in Oxford. The building was modern and housed several other companies. After speaking with the receptionist, he sat and waited. Moments later, the door opened and Lance entered. The friendly look on his face quickly changed to one of coldness. The receptionist noticed the shift in mood. "It's all fine, Lance," she said. "Mr. Andrews mentioned you had met before to discuss business." I knew this was just a follow-up to that. "It's all right, Sally, no worries." He opened the door for Matt to enter the office, then closed it behind them. Matt noticed that Lance had a slight limp. "I must be losing my touch with this information. I recognized the name but didn't expect it would be you. What brings you here, Matt?" I came to say I'm sorry in person. I was too young and didn't think about how my actions affected someone else's marriage. I thought it was important to apologize face to face. If you want to confront me about it, I won't resist. I deserve what I get." There was a pause as they looked at each other. Matt spotted a picture on Lance's desk. Lance was holding a baby, but he couldn't see the woman's face. "Congratulations on your baby with Anne," Matt said earnestly. Lance turned the photo to show him. The woman was not Anne. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize who she was." "Thank you, Matt, and I really want to thank you for this." Matt was surprised by this. "What do you mean, Lance?" "Your relationship with Anne pushed us to end a marriage that was already failing. It was bound to fall apart, and I guess you helped ignite that change." Lance chuckled lightly. "Actually, I was the one who lit the fire when I burned the house down." They both shared a quiet laugh. "After that, I went back to base and we deployed quickly. I shouldn't have gone. I wasn't focused and ended up injured." Matt felt bad. "I'm really sorry. That's all on me." "It's a little strange, Matt. You don't really look like a part of a terror group, and the guy who shot me lost more than just a knee. Yes, it was my fault, but you played a small role. Still, I'm thankful because I got out of the army after that, and my life turned around." Lance paused for a moment. "The best part is, I met Laura in the hospital while I was recovering. Things moved fast, and now I'm a dad, all because of you. So, as I mentioned, I genuinely want to thank you." They talked a bit more. Lance noticed Matt's wedding ring, and Matt shared some things about Tanya, which made him think of how Lance must have felt. Lance asked how Matt found him. He explained the article he had read. "If it were me, I might have let him face the consequences for what he did." "Now we're thinking along the same lines, Matt. Just picturing him held up by his neck, reminded that marriage is something sacred he shouldn't mess with, that might have made him rethink his choices. A warning that if he ended our security business, there were people skilled enough to finish what Mr. Angry started with the knife." The wet spot on his trousers told me he understood the seriousness of the situation. They both laughed again, sharing a moment of humor. Then there was a pause for a few seconds. "I think we're finished here, Matt. Thanks for coming. I know it's not easy after our last meeting. This gives us both a chance to move on." Lance got up and opened the door for Matt. Just before Matt left, he asked, "What happened to Anne, Lance?" "She came looking for me after everything that happened. She was upset, blaming herself. I told her it wasn't just her fault, it was both of us. I said it was over and that she should move on. I even told her to go back to you because I could see she was happy in your life. Unfortunately, she kept trying to get back together. I said some hurtful things to her to push her away. They weren't right, and I regret them. If you see her, please give her my sincerest apology. Tell her she's a good person. You haven't spoken to her since—" "No. The last I heard, she was working in a hospital in London." Matt left to go home. He hadn't completely cleared his part in the troubles of Lance's marriage, but he realized there were ways to move forward. He had done the same after Anne by meeting Tanya. After this tough conversation, he felt certain Tanya wouldn't lead them back into a harmful situation, but meeting with Lance made him think. For once, he decided to keep this meeting a secret from Tanya. It was the only thing he planned to hide from her. As time went on, more than a year passed since the incident that nearly ended their marriage. The pain had faded over time, but sometimes it could still come back unexpectedly. One day, Graham called Tanya into his office. "I wanted to tell you that Jared was found dead a couple of months ago. They found that he had taken a lot of heroin. The coroner thought it was strange because there were no clear signs he used it regularly. But new information has come up. Someone shared some footage from a doorbell camera. Here, take a look." It was a short video. Two men were seen leaving Jared's apartment with a suitcase and a backpack. Although their faces were not clear, Graham and Tanya recognized them as Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones. After looking into Jared's internet records and some details from his investigation before he was let go, it seems he was trying to sell videos he stole online. These videos may have even included one of you. His laptop and other electronic devices were not very advanced in his apartment. Speaking of that, Tan, with everything that happened with Matt, why did they want to talk to you? Was it worth discussing? If they offered you something, I hope you said no, Graham asked. Tanya said it was just a casual talk about advancing in her career. However, Graham knew they wouldn't leave London for something that could be discussed online easily. If anything happened, he planned to step in. Tanya returned to her office and found a contact for Jules on her phone. She sent a message. "Did you speak with one of my former colleagues by any chance?" In just a few minutes, she received a reply. "Tanya, please use proper English when you communicate. Regarding your ex-colleague, we talked to him about some private videos he wanted to sell. We don't want our rising star to be harmed before reaching the top, do we? Let's just say he was very pleased with our offer." Tanya was shocked. Had they harmed him to protect her? That's what the message seemed to suggest. She had forgotten all about it after the incident with Matt at the social club, but not in her heart. Mr. Smith had asked if she wanted to join the UK's elite undercover team, even giving her a chance to be in charge. He had the connections and said an opportunity was coming, and when it did, she needed to seize it quickly because it would be the only chance. Of course, she wanted this chance. He was depending on it. He already knew how to make her fit into his plans, which were important for the country. He told her to be patient, because the time would come, but she must not say anything about their conversation, especially to her husband. As time passed, Matt's 25th birthday approached. Just before that, Tanya received compensation for the crimes against her. She knew the perfect gift to get him. They had previously visited a motorcycle shop in Bournemouth to check out the newest models. They both loved the H2 SX SE, a powerful motorcycle that could comfortably travel long distances. Despite its high price, Matt hesitated, even though Tanya told him it was the perfect bike. She decided to keep it a secret and used her compensation money to buy it. There was also enough left over to rent a nice apartment for a few days in Saint-Tropez in the south of France. Once she revealed the plan, they could discuss their travel route together. On his birthday, she arranged for the Kawasaki to be delivered to their reserved parking spot in the underground garage at a specific time. During that time, they had gone out shopping, and when they returned home, Matt was frustrated to find a motorcycle parked in their designated parking spot. He asked Tanya if she could use her police access to trace the owner. A few minutes later, her phone pinged with the details. "Oh, catch," she said, glancing at the phone. "We might have a problem. I know who owns it. He lives in our building, and he's pretty stubborn. He won't move it easily." Matt's frustration grew. "Who's this guy?" She handed him the phone, and Matt looked at it in confusion. The registered owner was him. He turned to the bike, noticing that it was brand new. Tanya smiled, wrapping her arms around his neck and kissing him softly. "Want to see what's really going on?" she asked, stepping back with a playful glint in her eyes. She asked Matt to undo the buttons on her blouse, promising him a surprise. With no one around, he began to unbutton her blouse until he could see her bra. Tucked inside, resting against her skin, was a key, a Kawasaki key. Matt stood speechless, completely taken by surprise. Tanya laughed, clearly enjoying the moment. She leaned in for another kiss, one full of love and meaning. "Want to go for a ride?" she asked with a grin. "Absolutely," Matt replied, still shocked. But before they could head out, he pulled her into an embrace, his excitement overflowing. Together, they walked back inside, feeling light-hearted and happy, eager to take their first ride on the bike. The unexpected gift was a symbol of their closeness and the thoughtful bond they shared. Tanya had found the perfect way to surprise Matt, and the connection between them only grew stronger as they shared this special moment. Their day ended with laughter and joy as they explored the streets on the new bike, feeling the wind and freedom. It was more than just a ride, it was another step in their journey together, one filled with love, surprises, and the thrill of new adventures. They were so tired that they fell asleep for over an hour. When they woke up, showered, and got into their riding gear, they spent much of the afternoon on the new Kawasaki. Matt was excited about the bike's performance and how advanced it was compared to his Yamaha R1. Tanya thought it was a wonderful experience since she had only ever sat on the small seat of the R1. Matt was in for a treat with the next part of the surprise. That evening went as expected with dinner at their favorite restaurant. Inside Matt's birthday card were tickets for the Lee shuttle crossing to France for them and the motorcycle, along with a 3-day Airbnb reservation in Saint-Tropez. She had also arranged for both of them to take 2 weeks off work. They only needed to plan their route and stops as they traveled down to southern France. Saying that Matt was thrilled about this special vacation would be an understatement. 3 months later, they were on their way. They had bought new motorcycle jackets and helmets equipped with the latest Bluetooth systems, allowing them to talk and use their phones, making the trip more enjoyable. They rode through the busy English motorways that led them to the Lee Shuttle Terminal at Folkestone. Less than 2 hours later, they were cruising on beautiful roads in France as they headed to their first stop. On the third night, they stayed in Vichy and planned to head to Switzerland and Geneva the next day. About an hour into the drive, Matt's headset beeped, signaling that Tanya was on a call. After more than 30 minutes, she suddenly spoke up. "I'm sorry, Catch. Work needed some urgent information. I'm not feeling too well. Can we change our plans and go to Lyon instead of Geneva for the night?" "Can't they leave you alone for 2 weeks? They know we are away. I didn't know you weren't feeling well. Sure, let's find a place and you can send me the address for the GPS." Matt was surprised by how quickly she messaged him. In less than a couple of minutes, his phone pinged with the new address, and they adjusted their route. When they arrived at the hotel, Matt was shocked by how nice it was. The concierge gave him a confused look as he parked the motorcycle outside the fancy hotel. "Are you sure this is the right place, Tan? This feels a bit much for us." "I just picked one of the first options I found. It wasn't too expensive." After parking the bike, they checked in and found they had a large suite instead of a regular room. It didn't sit well with Matt. "How are you feeling, Tan? You don't look great. What was the call about?" "It was nothing, Catch. That's strange. Work calls you when they know we're on vacation and you're on the phone for 30 minutes. What could you possibly talk about for that long? We've been through this before, so please, just tell me. Be honest with me. I can tell when something isn't right," Matt said, watching Tan as she turned away from him. "I need to return to work," she replied without looking back. "So do I, but that's almost 2 weeks away. Can you be more specific? When do you need to go back?" There was a pause before she answered, her voice firm. "Later this afternoon." Matt quickly walked over to her, turning her to face him. "What did you just say? Are you serious? Please tell me this is some sort of joke. So, Graham wants you to go back to work right now? After everything we've been through, you're putting work ahead of us? This can't be true." What caught him off guard was her expression, not guilt, but determination. "Matt, please, you have to understand. We made an agreement. You know I want to be at the top and be the best. This call was my one chance. I need to do this. Once I finish, we can start our life together like I promised." "But Tan, you agreed to put us first after all that happened. Do you remember us? Not just your career? Whatever you're going to do, don't. It won't end well for us." The tension in the room rose. "Are you threatening me, Matt? Do you think you can control me? This isn't the past. I'm not just here to do what my partner wants." "No, that's not what I mean. Stop twisting my words. You agreed that work wouldn't come before our relationship. If leaving so soon into a holiday isn't putting work first, I don't know what is." Tan's anger flared. "What are you implying?" Matt's frustration boiled over. "Why call you back now? Do they need someone with special skills again?" Tan slapped him across the face, grabbed her bag, and hurried into the bathroom, locking the door behind her. 10 minutes later, she emerged wearing regular clothes, carrying a small backpack. "Tan, I'm sorry. That last comment was out of line. I'm just really upset. Please understand what you just dropped on me. We were going on a dream vacation and now this. If you can give me one good reason for what you're doing, I'll stop complaining. But if you can't, then walk out the door. And next time we talk, it will be through lawyers. I mean it. It's your choice." "I'm not going through this again." She moved to the edge of the bed and patted the space beside her. "Please, come sit with me and let's talk about this. I can't just leave things like this." Matt sat next to her. She reached out to hold his hand, but he didn't respond. "Before I met you, I wanted to prove I could be the best. I didn't feel like I was good enough for my mom, and growing up, I struggled to find myself. I often felt worthless. I decided who I wanted to be and promised myself I'd be the best at my job. That's why I didn't have serious relationships until you came along. I thought you understood and would support me. And I did, Tanya. But look where we are now. We're on shaky ground again." "Matt, this is the moment I've been waiting for. It's a chance to see if I have what it takes, and it's really important. Unfortunately, it's happening right now." "But why you? There must be someone else." She cut him off. knowing time was short. Because there are people who believe in me and think I'm the best. They're giving me this chance. Who are they, Tanya? What exactly are you doing? Where are you going? I'm sorry, but I can't share that. It's a matter of national security. So your husband has to stay in the dark again. At least tell me how long this will take. If it's just a few days, you can catch me up later. I don't know. It might be a couple of weeks. So I just carry on with the holiday alone? Seriously, Tanya, is this for real? After everything last time, you promised me that nothing would come between us. This isn't just a small issue. It's a huge gap that might become impossible to cross if you go through with this. Tanya's phone beeped with a message, which she read quickly. I'm sorry, I have to go now. She leaned over, gently turning his face towards hers, and kissed him, but he felt distant. Please, I love you. I promised that once I fulfilled this goal, we would start our family. We're close now. Please don't lose faith in me. She stood, grabbed her bag, and reached her hand out. Please walk with me to the terminal. They walked to the terminal quietly. Matt knew she was determined to go. As soon as she was on a plane back to the UK, he'd talk to her boss, hoping to convince him to make her return to him in France. In the terminal, she sent a message, and two serious-looking Frenchmen approached them. Tanya Andrews? Nice to meet you. We heard you would be by yourself. Who is this man? He's my husband. The two men exchanged looks. You know he can't be involved in this. He has to stay right where he is. We need to go. Time is running out. Tanya and Matt exchanged silent glances. Matt stared blankly, as if he couldn't connect his thoughts to his feelings. Tanya looked back at him, her eyes pleading for him to understand. She leaned in to kiss him, but he didn't react. She felt he was shutting her out. As the two men walked away, Tanya stood still, looking at Matt, neither of them moving. One of the men said, Are you in? If so, we need to leave now. Tanya looked away from Matt and began to walk. Matt called out, You told me to support you because your goal is close. But there's a concern, Tanya. Like in football, you can only play for one team. This is your last chance to choose. You can join us, me, you, and a future together, or pursue what they offer. It's your choice. She paused. The two men were a few steps ahead, waiting at a doorway. Tanya turned for a moment, and Matt hoped she would choose him. But she looked at the two men who were signaling for her to come over. Then she glanced back at Matt, who stood frozen and expressionless. With a sad face, she silently whispered, I love you, before following the men, letting the door close behind her. Tanya tried to ignore the feeling that she might have let Matt down. She told herself that once he saw how serious this opportunity was, he would understand. Their love would hold them together as it had before. She believed she could reach out to Matt again soon. Even though she felt bad for leaving him, she had been assured he would be taken care of. Now that your husband is gone, I'm Jean-Claude, and this is my colleague Philippe. We work for Interpol. Your team has sent the files you need to review. They'll include your ID and appropriate clothing when they arrive in a couple of hours. You should be at the operation site in 7 hours. They left Tanya with a tablet to study the files. By the time she lands in Dubai, she will need to assume the name Tammy Willis. Matt stood by the door, hoping Tanya would realize her mistake and run back to him. But she didn't. After a long 15 minutes, he decided to return to the hotel. As he walked back, he called her boss, Graham, but reached only voicemail. He left a message asking to call him back because it was important. Hopefully, he could convince Tanya to change her plans and return to Lyon the next day. As he picked up the things Tanya had left in her rush, he smiled. She had forgotten her passport, which meant she would have to come back to the hotel soon. A couple of hours later, Graham returned his call. He was surprised to hear that nobody had told him Tanya was being sent back. He promised to call Matt again once he figured things out, but since it was already 5 in the evening, he might have to wait until the morning. At 8 o'clock, his phone rang. He thought it might be Tanya or Graham, but was surprised to see his grandmother's home number on the screen. Hello? Is that you, Matt? It's Mrs. Thompson from next door. I have some sad news. Did something happen to my grandmother? No, Matt, I'm very sorry, but she has passed away. The police came in a little while ago, and it seems she passed in her sleep. They would like you to come over as soon as you can. Matt explained that he was in southern France, but Tanya should be returning to the UK soon. He would ask her to collect anything he couldn't until he got back. After hanging up, he struggled to accept this terrible news. How could he possibly lose the two most important women in his life within such a short time? He knew he had to stay calm. He tried calling Tanya, but it went to voicemail each time. Checking her last location, he saw she had been at Lyon Airport over an hour ago. He guessed that somehow Tanya had left France without her passport, so he would need Graham's help to find her. While making his way back home through France, she could start dealing with the arrangements for his grandmother's passing. He called Graham. "Sorry, Matt. I haven't gotten an answer." With a shaky voice, Matt interrupted him. "I really need your help. I just learned that my grandmother has died. It will be 2 days before I can get back, and I'm pretty sure Tanya is headed back to the UK right now. Can you please help her out with whatever she's doing? I really need her support." "Oh no, I'm so sorry. Of course I will do everything I can to help you. Do you know what flight she's on?" "No, she left me around 2 p.m. at the airport, but she forgot her passport. I waited, hoping she would return for it, but she never did." "Okay, leave it to me. Keep me updated and I'll do the same. I'll try to track her down." They ended the call and Matt went for a walk. He made his way back to the airport, knocking on the door that Tanya had gone through. Moments later, security arrived and took him to another room after he became upset and refused to leave until someone in charge spoke with him. They took away his passport and locked him in the room. Less than 5 minutes later, one of the two Frenchmen who had met Tanya came into the room. He handed his passport to Matt and held the door open. Matt stayed where he was. "You can stay here as long as you want, but if you're waiting for your wife, I can assure you she is no longer in France. I'm being kind right now because I know you're confused by her actions, but that option is gone now. Please leave the airport. If you come back, we will not be as welcoming, Mr. Andrews." Earlier in the day, this treatment would have shocked him, but now he tried to stay calm. As he walked back to the hotel, he decided to get a few hours of sleep. He wanted to leave and send Graham a message to arrange an earlier trip back to the UK. He hadn't been back long when he got a call from Graham. "Hi, Matt. You said you're in Lyon, right? Tanya left today?" "Yeah, that's right. Is there a problem?" "According to what I hear, she hasn't left France, at least not under her own name. I also spoke with my boss, Thomas Wilson. I'm very frustrated. He was going to tell me tomorrow that Tanya has been assigned to a special investigation. I asked for details, but he said it was beyond my level. I explained your situation, and he said he would see what he could do. I heard him say it, but it didn't feel promising. I doubt he will do much to help. Thanks, Graham. To be honest, I went back to the airport looking for her. A French official brushed me off, saying she was no longer in France. Keep digging. You need to stay focused. I've told the officers to check on anything regarding your gran through me. I also authorized securing the house where they had to break in." Matt thanked him for his help and shared his current plan, asking Graham to arrange his trip and that he would stay in touch. He tried to sleep but kept tossing and turning, his mind racing with questions. When he checked out, he asked about the bill. Had his wife paid for it? The answer was no. It had been paid by a business account very early in the morning, and they could not share any more details. He left and began his journey back through France toward Calais, wondering what was happening. Despite numerous attempts, he still had no contact with Tanya. The next day, Matt was waiting to board the Le Shuttle back to the UK when his phone rang. The caller ID showed Tanya's name. Finally, he hoped she was calling to say she was home and everything was all right. When he answered, there was a brief delay, then he heard Tanya's voice. He recognized the delay as a common tactic used when calls are spoofed from another location. "Matt, I'm sorry we parted like we did. Everything happened so suddenly that I couldn't see another way. I'm heartbroken, and I want you to know I care." Matt interrupted her angrily. "Tanya, stop! I'm tired of this. I need you to listen to me, and please don't say anything until I'm done, okay?" As he spoke, he took out his iPad. He quickly checked her phone's last location, which still showed Lyon Airport. It hadn't been turned on for 2 days. "Tanya, if you really care, why haven't you replied to my messages? We barely got through the last episode where you promised to put us first, and now you're not being honest. That call you said didn't mean anything was not true. You didn't book the hotel. It was arranged by someone else before you spoke to me. It was all lies, Tanya. You made a plan and then lied to keep it going. I can understand that your job requires you to keep things from me, and there are things I just can't know, but I need some answers from you. First, where are you?" With stress in her voice, she replied, "I'm really sorry, but I can't tell you. I want to, but I can't." "Okay, let's set that aside for now. Why have you ignored my messages and calls?" "I wanted to respond, really. I know you're upset with me about what I've done, but I promise I'll be back soon, Matt." "And there you go again, Tanya. What have most of those messages said?" There was a small pause before she answered. "How much you were hurt, and how much our marriage is at risk." "Wrong answer, Tanya. You're not being honest. You haven't even read them." "I want you to turn on your phone and read the messages, Tanya. Then call me back in 90 minutes when I'm in the UK. I'll wait at the bus station before I go home. If you don't call, don't reach out to me again." Clearly stressed, she responded, "I can't, Matt. I'll be working and won't have a signal." "You're not being honest again, Tanya." "I promise I'm not." "This is serious, Tanya. Here's a challenge for you. I'm going to hang up and call you back right away. I'll bet our marriage that your phone is off and you can't pick it up either because it's not on. Or, more likely, it isn't with you. Want to take that bet, Tanya?" The line was silent for a few seconds before Matt spoke again. "Okay, so that's another lie. Wherever your phone is, read the messages and call me back in 90 minutes to 2 hours at the end of this call. Once you've read those messages, if work is still more important than our relationship, it's over. No excuses. Just make the call to me." Matt hung up. He crossed over to the bus station and waited. At exactly the 90-minute mark, his phone rang with an unknown number. When he answered, he heard a tearful voice. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know, Matt." "Right, now you know. You walked away from me because you thought work was more important than us. The situation has changed, Tanya. Make a choice now." The crying grew louder. "I'll be home as soon as I can, Matt, I promise." "That's not enough. Can we talk tomorrow?" "I can't, Matt. It's complicated, and I can't explain why. I just can't give you a date, but I'll be home as soon as possible." "No, don't bother, Tanya. I had 2 women I cared for. One has passed away, and my feelings for the other have faded too. I have no one now." "Please, Matt, I'll try. He hung up. He realized that his marriage was over, something he never thought would happen, but Tanya had pushed him too far. He drove back to Bournemouth, his mind on autopilot as he called Graham to tell him he was home and that his marriage had ended. The next day, he started receiving texts from an unknown number. He couldn't reply. They expressed sorrow, insisted everything was fixable, and said she would be back soon, but there were no solid promises. He received several calls from the unknown number and even from Tanya's number, but he ignored them. Graham tried to help through official channels, receiving the same message that she would return when she could. 2 weeks later, it was his grandma's funeral. The early morning service at 9 a.m. was likely to be a small gathering. A few distant relatives, neighbors, some friends, Graham, and a couple of Matt's work colleagues who had known his grandma joined. Just as the chapel doors closed, a figure slipped inside. Matt looked to see if it was Tanya, but all he caught was a blonde-haired woman sitting at the back. Throughout the service, Matt felt numb. As the speaker shared stories of his grandma's life, his mind wandered to his own struggles. His wife had left him at a time when he needed support the most. Suddenly, it was over. The small group moved to the freshly dug grave. As the coffin was lowered, Matt shared a few words before they made the final farewell. Partway through, he glanced at the gathered crowd and stopped. The blonde-haired woman had moved behind them, and he now realized it was Tanya. She had dyed her hair. He stood there, staring as she gazed at the ground. When she felt his eyes on her, she looked up, but instead of love, she saw the hurt in his eyes. He finished his short speech. After the service, she approached him, crying, kissed his cheek, and barely managed to say she was sorry for his loss. Matt stood still, showing no emotion in response to her presence. While Matt spoke to other mourners, he noticed Tanya and Graham in a heated discussion by the parked cars. Tanya stormed off and climbed into the back of a darkened Jaguar. She didn't come to the gathering. After returning to what was now his home, formerly his grand's house, the gathering ended in the early afternoon. Graham was the last person there, and as they began to talk, Matt's phone buzzed with a message from Tanya. She asked if he would meet her for dinner at 7:30 at the Italian place they called Our Spot. She wanted to say how sorry she was for how things had gone wrong over the past few weeks and explain why. She was sure that once he understood, they could fix things between them. He showed Graham the message. I tried to speak with her after the funeral. I told her as her boss I was disappointed in her actions. All she said was that I wouldn't understand right now, but it would all become clear once she talked to you properly. If I were you, I'd go. You both need to share your thoughts and see how to mend what's happened lately. No matter what, Matt, I'm fully on your side. Graham left Matt, who felt tired. He went to lie down and think about whether he would meet Tanya. He woke up at 5 p.m., surprised he had slept for so long. He finally decided to reply, I will come if you promise no lies and you tell everything, really everything. Total honesty. You can forget the nonsense about the Official Secrets Act. That's the deal, Tanya. 5 minutes later, he received a reply. Okay. With no plans to drink, Matt drove to the restaurant. As he went in, he noticed it was much darker inside than usual. He thought it might be closed. This idea was reinforced by the closed sign on the door and the fact that it was locked. He knocked on the door, and the owner, Antonio, hurried to open it. Matt pointed out the closed sign, but Antonio didn't seem to notice it and didn't greet Matt as he usually did. Instead, he just gestured towards a table for 6, but there was only one person sitting there, Tanya. Matt looked around and noticed the restaurant was surprisingly empty, except for a couple of people sitting in a booth they usually occupied. It was too dim to see who they were. As he walked towards Tanya, 2 things caught his eye: her blonde hair, which stood out, and her noticeable tan that suggested she had been somewhere very sunny. He sat across from her and saw she was wearing the earrings he had bought her for their first anniversary. Despite his feelings for her, he had to admit she looked beautiful. She wore an elegant black dress he had never seen before, and her makeup was styled to match her new hair color. He didn't say anything, just stared at her, hoping she would start the conversation. Hi, Catch, she said, reaching out her hands across the table to him. Matt didn't move. My name is Matthew. I'll be nice and let you call me Matt. The only person allowed to call me Catch is my wife, but that woman is gone in my eyes. She bit her lip, trying to stay calm, and slowly pulled her hands back. That really hurt, Matt. I am truly sorry for not being here for you. It's broken my heart to think of you alone trying to handle this. Then why did you leave me alone? What was so important that you ignored me and my grandmother? She supported you, yet you chose work over her. Matt's voice rose, filled with anger. Tanya's gaze drifted away for a moment. She seemed to be waiting for Antonio to come take their order. He took his time arriving. Matt ordered a pasta dish, skipping starters. Tanya ordered some starters and a main course. Matt noticed that Antonio appeared nervous, sweat forming on his forehead. Hey, Antonio, don't worry about us. We just need to talk a bit. Sorry for raising my voice earlier. I won't be long, so just serve my meal with her starter, okay? Antonio nodded and hurried away. Matt had never seen him act like this before. He turned back to Tanya. I'm not here for a long chat. You said you would be honest, so please tell me the truth. I was in Dubai for a big case, Matt. It's complicated, involving many countries. Matt interrupted her. Why you, Tanya? If it's that important, what makes you so special? He paused, smacking his forehead in realization. Oh, of course! You have skills in a certain kind of undercover work? Tanya glared at him, anger on her face. She spoke through clenched teeth. You need to move past that one mistake. Look who's talking. Remember when you said work wouldn't interfere with our relationship again? They fell silent until Antonio arrived with Tanya's starter and Matt's meal. As they began to eat, Tanya asked a question. You said we were over. Have you started divorce papers yet? Matt dropped his fork in shock. Is that really what this is about? As if you didn't know, I lost the only person who loved me a few weeks ago. It's hard to think about that, but I'll be back on the case tomorrow if it makes you feel better. Matt's anger showed, and his voice raised again. Tanya flinched and quickly glanced over his shoulder. She reached across the table before speaking softly. I don't want a divorce, Matt. I still mean everything I've said about us and starting a family. It's a chance we could have in less than a year. But I need to achieve something. I want to be the best at what I do. I have to do this, Matt. I can see you still don't get it. You think I'm being selfish, but this is what drives me. It's been that way until you showed up. She moved her plate aside and grabbed a thin folder that had been resting on the chair next to her. She placed it on the table and slid it across to Matt. To move forward, We both need to sign this agreement. I'm glad you haven't started divorce papers yet because that would make this document unnecessary. It's important to me that we find a way to work this out together, and this document can help. Some parts might feel unusual, but it could help us achieve what we want with just a few small changes. She nudged the document closer to Matt. He opened it and noticed it had a heading from a government office, but something felt very wrong. Nearly half of the text was hidden with black boxes. As he flipped through the pages, he saw many blacked-out sections. He read the first line. This agreement, as dated in the signing sections, is a contract between His Majesty's government, blacked-out text, Tanya Andrews, and Matthew Andrews. There was an index listing the following pages, stating that all sections needed to be signed and dated for the agreement to be valid. The first section mentioned operational duties. He turned the page, but almost everything was still covered in black boxes, leaving him confused. Feeling angry, he flipped to the next page. Using the powers given to His Royal Highness, a special annulment of the marriage between... He closed the folder, his face turning red with frustration. Tanya looked over his shoulder, her gaze steady. He threw the folder at her. You must be joking if you think I'm going to sign this. Before he could say more, a hand forced his head down onto the table. He recognized the voice with an Australian accent he had heard before. Suddenly, everything that had been unclear started to make sense. Hello, friend. That's not a nice way to talk to our key player. He felt someone sit down next to Tanya. The Australian eased Matt back into a normal sitting position. He glanced at Tanya and saw tears in her eyes, but she was looking down. The older man spoke. Sorry, Matthew. We haven't had the chance to meet properly, but you've talked to my partner, Mr. Jones. Unfortunately, we couldn't introduce ourselves before due to your reaction after seeing those images of Tanya at work. We were a bit let down. We thought you'd handle that situation better. You haven't been very helpful, you know. Your little tantrum over the past few weeks almost ruined our plans and made it hard for Tanya to do her job because of your minor issues. But that's in the past now. She managed to complete the first phase thanks to her efforts, not yours. I want to apologize for cutting your vacation short. That was my doing, and I promise you will be compensated. You are being a bit childish. I would have preferred to stay in Saint-Tropez, which is a lovely place, even if it's in France. There are important parts that keep the world running, but sometimes smaller parts think they are more important than they really are. They aren't. With Tanya's help, we plan to address some significant issues that are harming our country. That's why she has been working hard in Dubai for our government. I wanted to bring her back to you sooner, but we needed to finish some key parts of our work, and Tanya has done an excellent job. Matt scoffed. Do you want to explain more? Of course, my friend. It's in the document you threw at your wife. Mr. Smith opened the document to the second page and turned it for Matt to read. Still upset, Matt started yelling. It says nothing. She's involved in a project that doesn't have a name, and it might last from 6 to 12 months, but there's no set date. She could be anywhere in the world, and I'm not allowed to contact her. The operation director might let her talk to me sometimes, but that means some stranger decides if she can call me or not. Mr. Jones tapped Matt's head on the table. Stop acting like a child. Do you have level 2 national security clearance? I don't think you do. You can view what your clearance allows, but beyond that, trust the government. I'll tell you something, even if it breaks some rules. I am the operation director, so grow up and treat this like an adult situation. No, forget you. He suddenly jumped up, pushing his chair back. Let's cause a scene. Antonio will call the police and put a stop to this nonsense. Mr. Smith sighed heavily. Matthew, you disappoint me. Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones stood up and walked to the nearest tables, grabbing their legs and tipping them over, sending plates and glasses crashing to the floor. As they went from table to table, Matt called out for Antonio, thinking he would come from the kitchen and stop the chaos in his restaurant. But he didn't. At the end, the only table left standing was the one where Tanya sat. While Matt was focused on Mr. Smith, he didn't see Mr. Jones sneaking up behind him. Suddenly, Mr. Jones grabbed Matt, holding him tightly, and something hard pressed against him. Mr. Smith brushed back his hair and turned to face Matt. Now, where were we? Ah, yes, the agreement. You need to sign it so Tanya can do her job. Struggling to speak, Matt gasped out his response. Not a chance! I'm never signing that nonsense! Finally, We agree on something. Your refusal means we don't need the agreement. I'm starting to think, Tanya shouted. Please stop. Matt, he means it. If you care about me, you'll sign it. You don't get it. You've ruined everything between us, so do what you want. I won't do it. Mr. Smith stepped forward and hit Matt in the stomach, making him double over in pain. Mr. Jones let go as Matt bent down. He glanced over and saw what was pressing into him. Mr. Jones had a gun. Yes, big guys like me get to have the fun stuff. You know, I could make a big mess here and nothing would happen to me. They'd just say it was some troubled person found dead with this gun. But I wouldn't want to harm the owner of this place. He makes great lasagna. Tanya spoke again. Please, Matt, I'm begging you, just sign it. Then I can do my job and come back to you. We can be together again just like we planned. I'm not signing it, Tanya. You might as well just end this now. Mr. Smith sighed, growing impatient with the situation. Tanya, it's your choice, yes or no? She looked at Matt, who was staring at her defiantly. Then she nodded. Moments later, Matt felt a small sting in his neck, and everything around him began to fade. The last thing he heard was Tanya saying she was sorry and didn't think it would come to this. Matt drifted into an odd dream. It felt like a mix of many things happening at once. Someone was taking pictures of him. He saw Tanya and felt her love for him and her promise to return soon. He woke up with a terrible headache. Everything felt strange, as if he were groggy, but he hadn't been drinking. Looking around, he realized he wasn't in his own house, but in the old bed he had shared with Tanya in their apartment. He turned to the side, expecting to see her, but she wasn't there. It looked like someone else had been there beside him. He called out, Tan, are you there? There was no response. He lay in bed for a few minutes before getting up, using the bathroom and brushing his teeth. After that, he went to the kitchen. Everything in the apartment looked normal, except for a handwritten letter, a large brown envelope, a USB stick, a business card, and 3 jewelry boxes on the dining table. He made himself a coffee and opened the letter. Catch, please believe me. I truly thought you would support me with this opportunity. I know it's a lot to ask, but I believe we can do this together. I'm sorry for how things turned out a few weeks ago. If there had been another way, I would have taken it. I know you're hurting, and I want you to know I share that pain. I love Georgina deeply, and I will carry that sadness forever. As the day goes on, I hope your thoughts will become clearer. Without your signature on those documents, I cannot take this job, which I can't explain to you right now. Just know that I am part of a small, important group. I hope you feel proud of how far I've come. I cannot explain why you signed the documents in this letter. Mr. Smith warned me about the risks of discussing it. All I can say is I'm sorry, and I hope you can forgive me if you think I was wrong. Last night we shared a special moment together, and it will be our last like that for a while. The next time will be the first step toward building our family. The next part is tough for both of us. The jewelry boxes hold my engagement and wedding rings, as well as my earrings. For some time I need to be someone else and cannot be Tanya Andrews. She will need to disappear for now. Please look at the USB stick, it's very important. The business card is only for emergencies and should not be misused. I love you, Matt. It breaks my heart to do this and not see you every day. Trust me, I have considered coming back to you since this all began. But I have accepted that I need to do this, and I hope you can be strong for us. I believe there will be chances to see each other, even if just for a moment. But I can't promise anything. Please try to forgive me. I truly believe our love can overcome this. With all my heart, I love you. I truly and absolutely love you. Trust in me and our love. Tan. He read the letter over and over. He still couldn't understand how this had become his reality. Matt was pulled from his thoughts by the sound of his phone ringing. It was Graham. Morning, Matt. Just checking in. Want to grab a coffee? Yeah, but Graham. Listen, I'm a bit hungry. Let's get some breakfast. I'll meet you at the Spoons near Tanya's place. If she's there, invite her too. No, shh. Graham hung up before Matt could finish. He found the call strange. After a quick shower, he got dressed and grabbed a bag for a heavy envelope and a letter. He placed a USB stick in his pocket. Taking off his rings, he left them with Tanya's jewelry and removed her apartment key from his key ring, leaving it behind. With one last look around the apartment to ensure he hadn't forgotten anything of his, he walked out and headed to the Moon in the Square Weatherspoons. When he arrived, Graham was already seated in a corner. Why didn't you come to me? I was at her apartment. Anyway, Tanya's gone, and I tried to tell you. I saw your car and knew you were there. I already know she's gone, Matt. Come sit down. These people are very dangerous, and I wouldn't be surprised if that apartment is being watched. Graham spoke with a sad tone. I got an email around 1 this morning saying that Tanya Andrews is no longer with the force, and all records of her are being erased. The department has been told not to look for her or contact her former husband. It is serious. I don't even have that level of security. Matt quickly went over the events from the night before, right up to when he read the letter, which he then let Graham read. Graham shook his head, disappointed that Tanya hadn't come to him for help, especially since he had tried to warn her months ago. They opened the envelope together. Everything in Tanya's name was now in Matt's name. Her car, savings, insurance, and even the property documents only showed Matt's name. There was even a mortgage statement in Matt's name for her apartment, which they had kept in her name for convenience. It was as if she no longer existed. Matt was completely shocked. No matter what they tried, she had essentially vanished from all records. He pulled out his phone to call their doctor, but it wouldn't work. Using Graham's phone, he called the service provider, only to find out that his number didn't exist anymore. Matt tried again with Graham's phone to reach her doctor and dentist, but they had no records of anyone by that name. Graham, who are those people? Are they MI5 or MI6? I mean, the things they are organizing, changing things, deleting things, do they really have that power? Yes, they do, and no, they aren't MI5 or 6, they are much worse. I think they are the group that does the dirty work the government ignores. They probably caused those 4 deaths in the prison and 1 more you might not know about. Jared. He died a few months ago, supposedly from an overdose. They were a bit careless and someone caught footage of them near his apartment. I believe they want to protect their interests. Tanya. Graham placed a laptop bag and a new phone on the table. What's this, my friend? I believe your current phone, tablet, and anything else like it might be tampered with to track you. Use this new laptop only connected to this phone for internet access, which is also new. It has just 1 number, the one that can reach me. Do not call anyone else from it. It was bought with cash yesterday afternoon in Portsmouth. As long as you don't search her name or call anyone from it, they won't be able to keep an eye on you. For your own phone, get a new SIM card to avoid raising suspicion. If you need to call me, do it in public or somewhere open. Graham took 2 days off work. He added an extra day after the funeral because he thought Matt might need help, but this wasn't what he expected. They drove to the restaurant they visited the night before, only to find it closed and completely empty. After asking around, they learned a truck arrived around 1 in the morning and everything was taken out. While they were there, a worker put up a "for sale" sign on the building. The real estate agent had no answers. It was a strange request from the head office demanding a survey and valuation that day, planning to sell the property within 24 hours. They had never seen anything like that before. Matt called the head office, pretending to be a customer who left a wallet there the night before and wanted to contact the owner. However, they had no information. The sales file stated that details about the property could only be shared through the solicitors listed as solicitors of the state. Another dead end. Matt then suggested going to the chief constable or visiting the home office directly. Graham advised against it, saying it would lead nowhere. Instead, he told Matt to find someone in the press who might be interested in investigating the situation. Whatever you do, Matt, don't involve others in this fight. They will be watching and can dismiss people as crazies or attention seekers. If you bring someone considered a threat, they'll likely end up like Jared, quite dead. And also, they may have made Tanya think you are safe, but trust me, if you make waves, they'll come after you. Matt's old phone beeped like a cash register. Even without a SIM card, the Wi-Fi worked at the restaurant. He was surprised to see a message from his banking app. He showed the phone to Graham. £50,000 had been deposited into his account. With the money from Tanya's bank accounts, he was over £100,000 richer than yesterday. He would give it all up just to go back a few weeks and not stop in Lyon, hoping it would have disrupted Tanya's plans. Don't think about reversing things, Matt, and don't be shocked if you get a letter from the tax office about that deposit tomorrow. It's a common trick used by police and others. You can either spend or save it. This brings me to my last question. Do you want to save what you and Tanya have left when this is all over? Or do you want to use this money as a way out instead of a divorce? If she returns, much of this may be undone. but they've also created a way for her to keep working if she wants to. Graham, I have a question. Please, tell me honestly. Graham nodded. What do you think or know Tanya is doing? Let's find a pub. I'd prefer to discuss this over a beer. They did just that, and Graham shared his thoughts. Are you sure about this, Matt? Once you learn the truth, there's no going back. Matt nodded sadly. I think Tanya's involvement in the case brought her to the attention of some shady people in the government. I noticed them at the press conference after the case, and they recognized her. I suspect they may have been watching her, maybe even reaching out to her quietly. Do you remember they appeared when the files were in the spotlight? Their visit got lost in the chaos, and I admit I missed it. They probably offered her something she wanted and needed someone with her talents. What talents, Graham? Graham took a long drink of his beer and paused before answering. Someone skilled at gathering information, able to blend in as an undercover person, but they likely wanted someone with other traits. I think they sought someone young, appealing, attractive, and female. He looked at Matt, seeing his energy fading. So basically, she's working for the government, gathering information in a compromising way. Matt, we can't jump to conclusions. That may not be the case. She could just be a pretty face working with other agents. We really don't know. But she dyed her hair, which makes me think she might be used as a lure for someone important. Considering the timing and effort involved, it must involve a significant player. So she's acting like a female spy, hoping I'll take her back. No way. After what happened yesterday, any small connection we had is completely gone. Today, I've cleaned up the remnants of what was left and moved on. They've helped me end my marriage. They finished their drinks, and Graham took Matt back to Tanya's apartment so he could get his car. I regret leaving the key inside since the apartment is now mine, Matt said. Graham handed him a spare key from his own set. She gave me that years ago just in case something went wrong so there would be access to her place. I think today counts as something going wrong. After Matt drove back home, he made a cup of tea and turned on his old laptop to see what was on the USB stick. There was one video file and he decided to play it. In the clip, he could clearly see himself at a table with two other people whose faces were blurred out. The man he knew as Mr. Smith asked Matt to confirm his name and that the woman sitting across from him was Tanya Andrews. They read through each page of a document, where the text was blanked out and the spoken words were replaced with beeps. At the end of each page, both Matt and Tanya were asked to sign and date the document, which took about 20 minutes. Finally, Mr. Smith mentioned that due to the document's secret nature, Matt would only receive a video transcript of what was recorded. Matt realized he had been under the influence of something, which made it seem like he was responsible for his actions. But he knew he wasn't. He focused on the main points from the video. In her role, she had to use all available methods to gather the information needed to complete the operation. They both recognized that Tanya was in an environment where her safety was not guaranteed. If she were injured, he would not be notified. He would only hear from them if something terrible happened. Tanya couldn't be reached by him. There was only a number for extreme emergencies. If it was safe, some communication might be allowed between them, depending on Mr. Smith's decision. To keep her safe, all connections and evidence linked to her identity would be erased as much as possible. This included her marriage to Matt, which seemed to vanish as if it had never happened. Any property they owned would temporarily belong to Matt while she was away on her assignment. Matt would receive regular payments for the disruption to his marriage. When the assignment ended, they would be given support, like counseling or medical help, to allow them to rebuild their relationship to where it was before Tanya began her role. If necessary, they would be given new names and protections under a special government program, along with any benefits available from that program. For any events related to the operation that needed further support, whether financial or emotional, assistance would be provided for a period of 18 years with no claims against the operative. Matt understood the first part to mean what Graham had suggested. If she needed to sacrifice her well-being to gather information, that was expected. What troubled him most was the last part. The only thing that came to mind that would cost money for 18 years was raising a child. When Matt realized this was what the statement meant, he hurried to the bathroom and was very sick. No, there was no way he would take Tanya back. 4 weeks later, He moved back into the old apartment he had shared with Tanya. Some friends from the fire station helped him redecorate, and he invested £10,000 to refresh his grandmother's former home, which was now his. Once it was done, he rented it out for £1,000 a month through an agency. Along with the money he had saved from Tanya's actions, he also ended up with almost £150,000 from his grandparents' estate. It was tough, but he decided not to sulk like he did a couple of years ago, when Anne, the woman he had been with, suddenly vanished. There were days he felt sad and missed Tanya, searching for ways to cope. A solution came to him at work a few weeks later. There was a program to encourage experienced firefighters to move to London for at least 6 months, with an option to stay longer and a nice relocation package. That was the answer he needed. A month later, he was transferred to Bethnal Green Fire Station in East London. Before he moved, he sold the apartment that was once Tanya's, but was now his. This sale would likely add another $300,000 to his bank account in a couple of months. He also rented storage for a year and moved Tanya's personal belongings there, donating the main items like furniture and the television to a shelter for those in need. He sold his Golf GTI, Yamaha R1, and Kawasaki H2 SX, and bought a brand new KTM 1290 Super Duke R. It was pricey, but so much fun. The riding position was perfect for the streets of London, even if the powerful engine and high top speed were more than what he needed in the city. But it was great to have. He was given a small furnished flat when he moved, but following Graham's advice, he found a flat share with a couple of guys where one of them had just moved out. After just a week, they decided to make the space available, so he arranged to be the only tenant by paying 6 months of rent and deposit up front in cash. Now he had a private address in Canning Town. His work schedule was different too. He had 12-hour shifts, 4 days on, 4 days off, followed by 4 night shifts, and then another 4 days off. He thought about finding activities to fill his time, maybe even dating casually. The best part was that he was far away from Bournemouth. He left behind the ghosts of the last few years, the sad family accident, the loss of his grandparents, his troubled time with Anne, and most importantly, he had cut all ties with Tanya. He hoped to never see or hear from her again. With that relationship behind him, he was ready to embrace this new beginning and enjoy his fresh start. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to Infidelity Plus to stay updated with more captivating tales of infidelity and payback. Turn on notifications so you're the first to see our latest content.